It is Tuesday night in East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around, gather around, gather around. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com, and what a great Tuesday night it is in East Lansing this week. And what a great weekend it was. Michigan State football, 37-33 victory over the Michigan Wolverines. And Michigan State tonight debuts at number 3 in the college football playoff rankings. The initial reveal for 2021. Who out there thought this was possible? I certainly did not. And I issued a buy for Mel Tucker stock back in June. Some of you that are Spartan Mag members would remember that. And I was talking about a long play on that one. Didn't know that this would be, it'd go off like this. Now, Michigan State still has a long way to go. Everybody knows that. Thank you, Jim Reynolds. Thanks a lot, Jim Reynolds. By the way, last week I saw some super chat tips that I did not mention during the show, and I meant to write those down and take note of them and mention them back here this week. And I've got them somewhere, but I don't have them in my hand right now. But if you did tip last week, if you did provide personal sponsorship and support to Spartan Mag Live last week, certainly appreciate it. And I apologize I didn't get to shout you out last week. Anyway, Michigan State fans, I know you guys are excited. Michigan State 8-0, defeated the University of Michigan again, second straight year. Michigan State ranked number 3 in the college football playoff reveal just a little bit ago. And the Spartans getting ready to go down to West Lafayette, Indiana this weekend to take on the Boilermakers, 3:30 p.m. I think it's an ABC game. I'll be down there. Paul Konerdijk will be down there providing coverage over at SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber. You'll like it. We appreciate all those new subscribers that have joined the Spartan Mag family. Certainly appreciate those guys. Appreciate all the work that Paul Konerdijk does. Also, Jason Killup, Noah Sprunger, Ricardo Cooney, cast of thousands in terms of the Michigan State subscribers, SpartanMag.com members. Of course, Big Mooby, Ron Armstrong, always a favorite, and the rest of the cast of characters. Hey, today Konerdijk and I were over there at the football building for interviews. Peyton Thorne, press conference. Was there, Chris Kapilovic, Harlan Barnett, Drew Beasley, Chuck Brantley. Chuck Brantley was a precious little dude, man. Young kid, true freshman. You could see as he took the podium, his eyes were like saucers. Not everybody is comfortable with public speaking, including a lot of you guys out there. And here you got a 19-year-old freshman still learning his way around campus. And he did fine. I mean, he paused a couple times. He might have gotten emotional a little bit once, but he worked through it and actually provided some really good sound bites that are going to be on local news, I'm sure. Just some good, honest stuff. Young kid, brave new world. I asked him, you played last year, 12 months ago, in front of 5,000 people, 10,000 people at the most, the high school games down in, I think, Venice, Florida. Is that where he's from? 4-star recruit. I asked him, what was it like to make an interception like that, not only in front of 70,000 people at Spartan Stadium, but in front of 9 million people watching on television, the highest rated college football game of the season thus far, Michigan State and Michigan. I can't remember what his answer was, but eyes were like saucers. Good kid. He'll be coming back one of these days, and he'll be running those press conferences. I've seen it happen before, but it was interesting to watch Charles Brantley, one of the heroes for Michigan State's big win against the Wolverines, have his first turn at the podium today. We got Peter Marsh checking in. Appreciate Peter Marsh. Thank you, Peter Marsh. Peter says, been a Spartan Mag supporter since I was in high school and just celebrated my 25th birthday with a win over Michigan. Hard to imagine a better weekend. Go green. Sounds good, Parker. Hope you behaved yourself. Tell you what, I was roaming around East Lansing a little bit this weekend, and it was amazing. It was a festival. It was a carnival. It was carnival. Combined Michigan State game with Halloween, East Lansing. Drove through town Friday night, had something to eat downtown, took a look around. It was good. You could tell a storm was brewing. Then on Saturday, leaving the stadium, I left the stadium at about 10 p.m., drove through just to see what it was like, to look around. Went, did some things, had to go do some other things around midnight, drove through again just to look around. because it's never been like that before. And there was a line of people. I posted this on the Underground Bunker message board Sunday morning, but I'll go over it again. There was a line coming out of the Land Shark. A lot of you guys know where the Land Shark is. Around the corner, and it wasn't just like a line of people. It was a line like 10 deep, all the way around the corner, all the way down toward Rick's. The entire sidewalk was full of people, and around the corner and down toward the parking lot. And there was a line coming out of Harper's, similar, all the way down to 7-Eleven and around there. I mean, the bars were obviously full. Outside of the bars, I'm guessing a couple of thousand or more. And it was constant. And people were happy and everything was good. And festive. Now over there at Cedar Street, Cedar Village, I drove by there at 10 in the morning before the game, on the way to the game. And I'd been downtown Friday night and it was just festive and everybody was happy. Halloween costumes and stuff. Saw a guy with a Paul Bunyan costume on. That was a good one. This is the best one I saw. Saw some other things that were a little bit PG-13, but I'm not judging. All right, so then the next morning, driving to the game around 10 o'clock. It was a little bit late getting to the game. Had some other things going on, but drove by Cedar Village because I park over there by Auditorium Road, over there by the old computer building and the parking structure there. And as I drove by Cedar Village, there was just like a wave of people. Even though it was 10 in the morning, there's just something sinister about that whole thing over there. Not judging. I've never actually been in the middle of the Cedar Village thing, but at 10 in the morning, I could just tell there was an unsettled vibe there. And the deal is, downtown East Lansing, you have people that are in the bars, then you have people waiting to get into bars. So they're doing something. They want to get in, they're seeing with people, they're hanging out with people, talking, whatever. Over there at Cedar Village, they're not waiting to get into bars. They're just all circled around, looking at each other, looking for something to do. And then invariably, things happen. And as far as some of the things that happen, we'll see how many of those people are Michigan State students. We've talked about that over there at the bunker. We're talking football right now, thanks to Jim Reynolds. Thanks also Parker Marsh. What did Jim Reynolds say? Thanks for the film room threads this week. Go Green. Appreciate that about the film room, because Saturday night after the game, I did some posts on the film room, some video that had been on Twitter, and just broke down some of Michigan State's ground games that broke against the University of Michigan. Spent some time on that, and those take some time. Did that, and I was on the message board a lot, and I dove deep into the 3-2-1, which is an analysis piece. Next thing I knew, it was late, and I ran out of gas, and I didn't finish my .comp article, which I was very upset with myself about Sunday, and I'm still upset with myself about that. Some people have told me to do that first, do the other stuff last. The problem is I thought I could do those things first and still do that, and it didn't happen. And I choked. Had a pretty decent one going. The lead angle was going to be something along the lines of, and I wrote it, I'd started it. Those of you that have read some of the articles in the past we've done, it was along the lines of, if you needed any proof that this rivalry has changed and Michigan State's program has changed, the only evidence you needed was Michigan State winning this game against the University of Michigan, 37-33. And I mentioned that, when I've written these .comp columns in the past, I'm usually writing to what I'd perceive to be a long-suffering fan base. That when you had a big moment, it was a big moment. I could feel that with you guys. But you guys are not long-suffering anymore. You guys are not long-suffering anymore. You guys are short-suffering. 2016 was tough, but it was short. You guys are right back in it. Your team is right back in the top 5 nationally. I'm not saying they're going to stay there, but that's short-suffering. You want to know what long-suffering is? Your buddies over in Ann Arbor. That is long-suffering. What are they, 4-10 against Michigan State the last 14 years? No Big Ten titles since 2004. You as fans that have been with Michigan State for a long time, you know what it was like to be up on 17, by 17, DeAndre Cobb, long touchdown run in Ann Arbor back in 2006, being up 17, they come back and win. Being up 17 against Notre Dame in the rain, Drew Stanton, Notre Dame comes back and wins consecutive seasons. You know what that was like. You know what it was like when Michigan State won the game in overtime with Larry Caper, and what a sigh of relief that was, because Michigan State was up by 14 in the fourth quarter, and somebody named Tate Forcier came back to tie the game up, and you know what that felt like back then. It was still a long-suffering fan base. The Rose Bowl in 13 was still ahead of you. The College Football Playoff in 15 was still ahead of you. The Cotton Bowl in 2014 was still ahead of you. But back then, Michigan State had turned the corner, and then Michigan was making a comeback in that particular game. But Michigan State stemmed the tide, won that one in overtime. But you knew what that felt like. Haven't had a feeling like that much lately. Now that feeling is on the other foot in Ann Arbor, Michigan fans. Now they are long-suffering. Now they know what it's like to blow a 16-point lead. Like I said, if you needed any proof that this rivalry has changed and Michigan State's program has changed, it was a microcosm and all rolled into one, and you saw it there. Live and in color, amazing theater. Misty rain, a little bit of cold, a little bit of drizzle, right there on natural grass and dirt. And the Spartans coming back showing you get in the deep water. Michigan State will give you that death roll, and they gave it to the Wolverines on Saturday, and it was amazing to watch it. I happen to be watching it in the upper deck with my daughter. I like to go to 1 or 2 games a year with family members. My son had a ticket with someone else, and they had great seats. We had. My daughter was just happy to be there, and it was interesting. I like to be in the stands just to stay in touch a little bit, to spend some time with the family, of course, but to stay in touch with what the vibe is in the stadium. And it was amazing. It was amazing. I know a lot of you guys were there too, and girls. Congratulations to you for all the noise you made. And the Michigan State student section, the deep end, as they're called now. I've been thinking about it for a while. And Michigan State's student section right now is the best student section I've ever seen at Michigan State. There have been good years when they've been loud and everything, but I heard they sold out really quickly this year. You've got a lot of Michigan State students that, like everybody else has been through all the COVID delays and everything. They're just eager to get back into being young people and being students again. And they listen to Mel Tucker. When Mel Tucker says he wants students there, get there early, they were there early. They were involved in pregame. They were loud. They stayed with the team. Students sometimes arrive late, especially for a noon game. They were not late for this one. Sometimes they leave early. They didn't leave early for this one. The best student section I have ever seen at Michigan State is 2021 right now. Amazing. I don't know if some of you would agree, but I'm throwing that out there. Old Tuck. Always appreciate Old Tuck. Old Tuck says, who do you compare Montori Foster to from the past? Damian Hiram? That's Old Tuck being a little bit of a smart aleck. We love Old Tuck from Austin, Texas, by way of Ludington, Michigan. No. Damian Hiram, former quarterback from where? Jackson, moved to wide receiver, flanker, recruited by Perlis in 93, lost the quarterback job when Michigan State went out and got Tony Banks from the junior college ranks, moved Damian Hiram to flanker, and he made some contributions there. Was a good blocker as a wide receiver. Montori Foster. I don't know, Tuck's just being funny, but Montori Foster's on the field now with Jalen Naylor being questionable with the hand injury, and Montori Foster's been in and out as a regular, played in this game against Michigan, had a nice little hitch reception at one point, as every reception was badly needed. He came through, finished that one. So I think Montori Foster you're going to be seeing more of him, and we'll get back to that in a moment. We've got questions from the masses. If you're new to the program and you're new to the fun and festivities here at SpartanMag Live, usually it says SpartanMag Live in the corner of your screen, but we're having trouble with that. Usually we put up the phone number, and we'll do that right now. Anyone wants, well, I'll put the phone number a little bit later for people that want to call in. Not sure if we're going to have any people call in or not, but we'll put that up if people want to join in. I invited SpartanMag.com subscribers over at the Underground Bunker message board to post questions, and we will field those questions mailbag style tonight, as we always do. We appreciate all the people that show up to play and have a good time with us. James Bannon. How about James Bannon? Appreciate it, James Bannon. Appreciate it, James Bannon. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody, all the support and the tip jar tonight. Appreciate that. That's Dowd Supermarket, Mackinac Island. Make sure you go there and get some fudge next summer. My favorite store in the country. James Bannon says, I hope we get more information on the recruits that attended the game and locker room celebration. Jason Killip had some quotes and insight from a lot of those players that were here this weekend, and that information continues to roll in. He had some information and some stories about some of the recruits that were on campus from Seattle, Texas, in-state guys. We'll keep rolling that out there and getting into that because you could not have a better recruiting weekend than what Michigan State had this past weekend. However, if some of the mothers of recruits were downtown in East Lansing, Michigan on Saturday night, I'm not sure they would want to turn their sons loose into all that. That was kind of a joke. Kind of. Shawshank Raj. Appreciate your contribution also. Is that my guy Raj from Atlanta? Is that my guy Raj from Atlanta? You better be behaving yourself down there. If it is, appreciate Shawshank Raj chiming in. We got Tim Martin. Check out Tim Martin. Holy cannoli. Holy cannoli. Tim Maine it is. Tim Maine. I think we got a caller over here.
Call from
Nils.
All right.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
Hey, Nils, watch yourself. You are on the air. You are live around the world, so don't say anything you'd real regret. We'll get to you in a minute. Hold on. Tim Maine, he's saying giant pear character waving flags around. Okay, making the buildings in the front of him tremble. I think that was supposed to, I don't know what that means. I think that might have been an emoji or something like that. But Tim Maine, thank you very much for your generous tip, personal sponsorship of SpartanMag Live tonight. Nils, hold on 1 second. We're going to get to question number 1 over here in the mailbag from Spefton out of East Lansing. He says, I'm curious to get your opinion. We're going to the mailbag now if you don't know how this program works. Spefton from East Lansing, Michigan says, I'm curious to get your opinion on how this monumental win will affect our ability to become a national recruiter. I've seen us mentioned in a very positive light throughout the country, and Mel Tucker specifically has elevated his national profile amazingly. Most are showering him with praise, if not out and out raving. So what will this mean for recruiting? It's already having an impact. It'll have an impact in 2023 and in the years ahead. This past weekend, I mentioned some of the visitors. Kedrick Rescano is a 4-star running back from Texas. He was on campus. Caleb Presley's a 4-star defensive back corner from Seattle, Washington. And his coach, Corey Sampson, had some really interesting comments for Jason Killip in a story that he did today about Corey Sampson being it was Thomas Wilcher, Michigan State's director of community relations and high school relations, reached out to Corey Sampson, I think, to kick off the recruitment of this corner in Seattle. They got to talking. Thomas Wilcher, former high school coach, legendary high school coach at Detroit Cass Tech. Corey Sampson, head coach out there in Seattle. They hit it off pretty good. Corey said he watched Michigan State's, this is the coach now, he watched Michigan State's game against Miami, and he told Caleb and his father, hey, you got to check out this program, Michigan State. Check this out. They watched him a little bit. Then they had this big game coming up against Michigan. And the head coach, Corey Sampson, said, that's a game you should go check out. So they went there. They loved it. Story at SpartanMag.com. There's going to be more of that to the point where Michigan State is going to get to the point where they're going to have to be picking and choosing on who they're going to go after. Mel Tucker has a presence. You guys have seen this. A lot of you just see him in the press conferences, and I've been saying for a long time, you know, he's very clinical at the press conference. But if you get in a room with him on the field, watch him. He's got that presence about him, but he also has this approachable sense about him. He's just a boss out there, and it resonates, and people respond favorably to him. And with this 8-0 stuff going on, if it continues for into the future, it could really be something. All right, Nils. Let's go out to Nils Deco, formerly of the Horn in Austin, Texas. Been waiting patiently. Always appreciate his insights. Nils, I assume you still have a smile on your face from the weekend. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good until the Astros are down 3-0. I'm kind of disappointed about it. That if I know all the Tiger fans up there think the Astros are cheaters, but that's okay. They weren't cheating this year, and they're still in the World Series. But
what's the score? What's the score?
It's 3-0. It's 3-0.
Just lost him. Let me get him back here. We're primitive this way. I was trying to.
You reached Nils Deco?
I'll just tell him to try back. Sorry
Call
about that.
from
Nils.
To accept, press 1.
Nils, sorry about that.
I didn't say anything wrong, did I?
No, you're fine. I was telling Ron Armstrong to try back later, and I hit the wrong button and dumped you. But hey, it's very primitive, but we're happy with it. Sorry about your Astros, man.
That's okay.
I found myself.
Spartans won.
Yeah. So your takeaways from Michigan State, first of all, and the big news from tonight, Michigan State number 3 in the college football playoff rankings. Everybody's seen it by now. Georgia number 1, of course. Alabama number 2. I've got no arguments with that. Just didn't know what the playoff committee was going to do. No arguments with that. Your Michigan State Spartans number 3. Oregon number 4 ahead of Ohio State number 5. I think that's good. Oregon beat Ohio State. Makes sense. Cincinnati number 6. That's what everybody was wondering about, where Cincinnati was going to be. Michigan carrying a lot of respect. 7 ahead of Oklahoma at number 8. Wake Forest 9. Notre Dame 10. Michigan 7 ahead of Oklahoma. I got a lot of respect for Michigan. We'll see if they hold it together. It's a good Michigan team. I know Oklahoma's had their troubles, but before we get into Michigan State, what do you think about Michigan being 7, Oklahoma number 8?
I just think that the Big 12 is down this year. I mean, I think they realize that, Oklahoma really should have lost versus Kansas. If you go back to that critical play that in hindsight was an illegal play where Caleb Williams takes the ball from the running back Kennedy Brooks on a 4th and 4 type play. They said it was illegal because he took the ball away from him. It was like advancing the ball forward. So, I mean, Oklahoma really could have gotten beat by a Kansas team that, has struggled. They were 38-point favorites, Oklahoma was. I think they ended up winning 38-25, and they were probably – they talk about that game control thing. That was something that was mentioned a couple years ago. It was always about game control, like how often are you in charge of the game? And I think OU was in charge of the game probably 5 or 6 minutes. The Texas game, they were down 28-7. They caught Texas. I mean, Texas should have won that game. I just think that they realized OU has some, they're fallible. And so I think Michigan, had a couple good wins. The win where they dominated Wisconsin. They looked good against us for, probably 40 minutes. But I think I think Big Ten's getting some credit for once. Maybe because Gary Barta, the Iowa athletic director's in charge. But, OU doesn't scare me. I think OU is a team that when it comes down to it, I think they've got too many issues. I can't imagine them being in the playoff. But I think they're probably sick of seeing them every year get beat up as that fourth team in the playoff.
Well, they still have to beat Baylor and Oklahoma State and Iowa State. Oklahoma could have some losses coming up still, right? As far as Michigan goes, Nils,
so.
I was talking up Michigan last week. Everybody knows everybody got sick about that. They're sick of it. I didn't talk them up that much. I mean, when the pre-snap read came out, I was just leveled with people. I thought they would present things that Michigan State would have trouble with. Michigan State withstood their running attack. I didn't think that would happen. They did. Much respect to Michigan State for doing that. Cade McNamara certainly impressed me. He has not been that good all year. He comes out making reads over the middle. Going back and watching it again, it's not like he was checking people off and making multiple reads and hitting those over the middle. He just knew there would be some openings there that were well scouted. He did a good job. He has arm talent. Everybody knows that. My point is that Michigan came out on Saturday and had a version of Cade McNamara that we had never seen before. And they had Andrell Anthony, whom we had never seen before. Between Cade McNamara and Andrell Anthony, those were two components of an already good team that the Wolverines had never presented. That's why I say Michigan, in a lot of ways, played their best game of the year on Saturday. Now, they had...
That was on offense, though. On offense. But on defense, that run defense, that everyone was bragging about, giving up 14 points a game. I think they were giving up like 55 yards a game rushing. They had some leaks there.
And they came out and they tried to stack the box a little bit more with some bare fronts. They began the game with 4 down linemen, and a 6-1 front was more like a Virginia Tech type of thing, specifically to stop Kenneth Walker. And Walker clipped off runs of 7 and 9 in the first series. Then Michigan State on 3rd and 5 throws an interception. But Michigan State established early that they were not concerned about that bare front, that they would run right into it and run through it. Now, Michigan had some stops here and there, but Michigan State established early, undaunted by whatever front they wanted to play. Michigan State was prepared with that week off or whatever it was to come out and run the ball. I didn't think Michigan State was capable of doing that. Well, capable maybe, but after what we had seen in the previous body of work against Indiana, with Michigan State's problems on the ground against Indiana, I didn't see that coming. However, as you like to tell me all the time, hey, and everybody says, throw the records out. It's a rivalry game, right? You have a rivalry game. That's a tide that lifts all boats. And then you've got a week off. You combine those two things, and Michigan State was a better more physical, polished version of themselves in terms of the run game. And I didn't see that coming. I didn't predict that. But that was a great accomplishment within the victory, was Michigan State rushing for that yardage and Kenneth Walker Jr. vaulting to the top of the Heisman chase. Amazing to see that. 5 touchdowns. Kenneth Walker III, Nils Deco, what are your thoughts?
Well, I just think that, I was listening to XM Satellite Radio today on ESPNU, and I think it was yesterday, and Ben Hartsock was talking to Brock Huard, and he was just talking about the job that Chris Kapilovic has done as offensive line coach. This is a group the last 2 or 3 years that's been, much maligned. They brought in, the Jarrett Horst and the kid from Arkansas State, but this is still the same group that, last year struggled. I think he's done an amazing job with this offensive line. I think he did a great job in the off week. And then also you've got a guy that's a difference maker, probably once in every 15 years type of running back who, just has figured out, hey, this is a great situation for me. I mean, what's amazing to me is the fact that Michigan State placed this kid 2 years ago in the Pinstripe Bowl, and I think he had some success because he had a different number 25 at that time, and then went to number 9 last year at Wake Forest. But this is a kid that probably saw something at Michigan State. If he thinks about it in hindsight, he's in that bowl game. He's like, hey, I could play in this kind of offense. And I think that was the year Collins had the 997 yards. And then, 2 years later, he's transferred to Michigan State, and he's got a chance to probably be a, second or third day draft pick after this year. And it looks like he's going to have a great chance of being in New York at the Heisman. I mean, the kid, what I want to see, and I think this is something Michigan State needs to evolve to, is get the ball to him in the flat. He ran like an arrow route out in the flat on the right sideline. I can't remember. I think it was in the third quarter. But, caught the ball real well, got right up. I mean, I probably got 9 or 10 yards. I just think that's something as a release, him out there in the flat. I know they like to bring Joyner in on third down, but, you kind of know what he's going to do if they're bringing in Joyner. Whereas if on third down, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, and you don't think you can get it running the football, put him out there, run him in the flat. I mean, no one's going to tackle that guy one-on-one. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in the country can tackle this guy one-on-one. So
I agree. He's dangerous out there. I know the play you're talking about. I think Michigan State wanted to get that more involved. And I was going back and looking at his highlights from Wake Forest earlier this week, just because I wanted to get another look at it to say, I mean, was this guy that good back then? And he was pretty good. I'm talking about last year's highlights, and he was good. You see some of the Kenneth Walker in there, but it's more accentuated this year because of the offseason conditioning that he's went wild with. In last year's highlights at Wake Forest, he had 1 or 2 receptions, some difficult receptions out in the flat that were not easy, that he made look easy. I agree with you. There's more untapped talent there in the pass game to K9, Nils.
And I think that's something you're going to have to evolve to because they're going to stack the box. And, I mean, Purdue is a good defense, good, solid, upper tier of the Big Ten. And that's something you're just going to have to do. And you get yourself your 6-8 yards out there every time. Because like we talked about, no one's taking that guy. I mean, I don't know how you get the ball to him in the flat. I mean, good things can happen. And I think maybe they need to revisit, their screen pass. I think people are onto their screen pass. They must be telegraphing something because it seemed like they tried to do it one time, I think, against Michigan or twice, and it was stacked up horribly. And I don't know if there's something in their personnel that they know it's coming, but that's something they need to revisit and figure out a way to modify that so they can get that in because they were a great screen team early on in the season.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the formation or if there are some other type of tells or if people have picked up some signs. And Michigan's been very good at deciphering opponent offensive traits and tells and tendencies. I remember hearing somebody talk about when Michigan played Western Michigan early in the season. It might have been my friend Doug Karsh was on the sideline. He noted that Michigan's coach, defensive coach, can't think of his name right now, the new defensive coordinator, was shouting out against Western, which was early in the year, was shouting out what the play was going to be before the play. So they put a lot of time into that, into tendencies, which was good against Nebraska, but then Nebraska used that against them for a couple of misdirection touchdowns. Both of Nebraska's misdirection touchdowns came as a result of Nebraska selling a tendency and coming back for the first time in the season with some throwback things, went for touchdowns. So that can work against you sometimes. But you're right, Michigan's good at that. They were into Michigan State's screen game, and Michigan State tried it once or twice and went away from it. And Michigan had trouble against the screen pass against Northwestern. Didn't have much trouble against Northwestern, but there's one drive in which Northwestern hit 2 screen passes, got down there and missed a field goal when it was 17-7. And was it Wisconsin might have had success with the screen pass once, which, we did some film before the game Friday night, Saturday morning about Michigan's defense and how aggressive they are on third down. So the screen game is an answer to that, but they stopped a screen against Michigan State once. One time, they actually, number 12, Josh Ross, put his hands on Kenneth Walker III in a screen situation and held him. And incomplete. Might have been third down. Had to punt after that. But I don't hear Michigan State fans wanting a holding flag on that. They're not like putting together Zapruder film of, look, they were holding right here. Like my buddy Rich Eisen. He's not my buddy.
Oh, my God. Was he over the top of what?
Holy
did he lose,
cannoli.
Did he lose a car or his house? Did he bet Crowley Sullivan? I know he and Crowley Sullivan are buddies. I wonder if he bet him some big wager.
I don't know, but Rich Eisen, I feel bad. I mean, I shouldn't feel bad for him. He's a very successful broadcaster. But as a human being, emotionally...
Abomination. That was his favorite word on that whole thing.
I mean, he was hurt. And then you go back and you look last year when Michigan State beat Michigan. He was hurt by that one, too. I mean, I'm in the business of providing coverage to Michigan State fans who I hope love their football and are serious about it. But I don't want anyone being like that, Nils. I was a good customer. That's the type of customer you want. But he was just, and I made this analogy. For those of you that have not seen it, Google Rich Eisen's reaction to the Michigan State game. And he talks about the penalties and those type of things. I understand some of it, but he went overboard with it and is like he's shaken by it as a person. We had this discussion at the Underground Bunker message board last night, posting about it. And Rod, who's a really great poster on SpartanMag, we were making the point that it was like he's like a little child that just found out for the first time that the Great Pumpkin doesn't exist. I was going to say someone else, but I don't know who's listening because the guy at the North Pole does exist. I just want to make that clear in case there's youngsters out there watching. But
exactly,
so. But I mean, like a child, and what it is you've got people, especially in a certain age group, that have been led to believe that Michigan, because they were great at college football back in the 1700s, there's a lot of people that have read about that. They've not seen film of it because there is no film of it, but they've read about how great they were and how great Michigan's been and all these things. So when they go to Michigan or they're alums or even if they're just fans, they assume that Michigan is great. Michigan's going to be great. They're great every year. September Heisman is going to be great. But now it's been 15 years and that's not happened. 17
and
years.
And what was Bo's record at the Rose Bowl? Was he 2-8 or 2-10?
He was terrible in the Rose Bowl. The most overrated coach in the history of intercollegiate athletics. All right, so they've not won a Big Ten title in 17 years. So for these people that are getting up around my age as an old man, a large chunk of their lives have been without what they think was promised to them by the football gods or something, that Michigan was going to be a great part of their life. And there's a hole in their lives, not all of them, but a lot of them. And this guy, Rich Eisen, there's a hole in his life, obviously, because Michigan has not been good, and it hurts him. It shouldn't hurt him that much. Go fishing.
Okay, let's
go take up fishing.
I want to interrupt you. The one thing I noticed, there was a certain kid from Saline, Michigan, whose granddad was the coach at Michigan, and whose dad, I went to football camp at Michigan with Jason Carr.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is this kid at the Michigan State-Michigan game as a Michigan State recruit? I mean, there's got to be something wrong in Denmark over there, right?
I don't know. He's an excellent player. I talked to him a little bit at the camp this summer. Great, bright kid. If he goes to Michigan, certainly wish him well. He's got a chance to do real well somewhere. But, yeah, he's giving Michigan State a real long, serious look. He was at the game. Maybe he just wanted to take it in. And maybe, down deep, I'm sure he's rooting for Michigan. He grew up a Michigan guy, right? Lloyd Carr's grandson.
Yeah, granddad's the head coach.
Absolutely. So I would assume he's a Michigan fan. And on the inside, I'm sure he's rooting for Michigan. You have to. Some of those things are involuntary. But to his credit, he was a guest of the Michigan State University and said all the right things when he was talking to Jason Killip of SpartanMag.com about the visit. And I'm not surprised for a young guy. I mean, he's a mature guy, CJ Carr. Saline, Michigan, good quarterback recruit, but he was at the game, and you got to be impressed. I mean, when I was there, Nils, I was looking around, and the way it was so packed, and the way the weather was gray, and people were kind of bundled up a little bit, and there was just this buzz, like before game, and whenever the music was not blaring. And I kept thinking to myself, man, this is probably what it was like in 1966. I kept thinking that. This is probably what it was like in 66. That's why I was so glad to be out of the press box on Saturday and be in the stadium. An historic moment at an historic stadium. You start thinking about stadiums in the Midwest of all kinds. You got Wrigley Field, got Ohio Stadium, Michigan Stadium, Lambeau Field, Spartan Stadium. In the Midwest, in terms of venerable historic stadiums, Spartan Stadium is way up there. Way up there. Been around since, 1924? The game of the century was there. Bear Bryant coached there once. Bobby Bowden coached there once. Paterno, the rest. Notre Dame. Everything that's gone on there. National championships. The game of the century. For youngsters that are not familiar with it, Michigan State and Notre Dame 10-10 tie. You've heard all about that. But what made it so special is that back then Michigan State had went to the Rose Bowl in 1965, and the rules were in the Big Ten you could not represent the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl 2 consecutive years. So because Michigan State went in 65, they could not go in 66. And back then the Big Ten did not allow anyone else to go to a bowl game other than the representative at the Rose Bowl. At that time, Notre Dame did not play in bowl games. You had Michigan State and Notre Dame, the two top teams in the country, and they played back then in November at the end of the year. Neither team was going to go to a bowl game. That, in Spartan Stadium, was the national championship game, and it took place right there, and it was a 10-10 tie. That's why that game was so special, and something like that will never be duplicated again, and it took place right there on natural grass on the banks of the Red Cedar, Nils Deco.
And if you look at now, let's look at the ratings. The ratings came out. I was reading The Athletic today. I think it was the best game of the year. I think it's the sixth best rated Fox football game since they've been doing it. I think it was like 9.5 or 6 million people watching the football game. And that's the thing. They talk about the SEC and how they've got more money than God, but when it comes down to it, the best rated viewed football game of the year is a Michigan State-Michigan game that went off on noon on October 30th. And that's just the credibility to it. I know Michigan has a lot of fans, but like Mel Tucker says, Michigan State's got 550,000 living alumni. Michigan State has a great brand going back from Magic Johnson, Draymond Green. Just the Draymond Green thing with Steve Kerr and Steph Curry. Steph Curry, who's probably one of the top 3 basketball players in the entire world in terms of brand, and he's talking about Kenneth Walker. Yep. It's that type of stuff that people don't really think about. Stephen Curry's comparing Draymond Green's game to how Kenneth Walker played that Saturday. And they're not watching that game unless Draymond is making them watch that game because he's so insufferable probably. Yeah. But, like Steve Kerr said, he says, hey, we knew he was going to have a good game because Michigan State won. And you can't buy that kind of advertising and branding.
And Draymond went out and had a double-double. That's buzz. That is first-rate branding buzz. And Michigan State's got it right now. And all of a sudden, Kenneth Walker, the call that Gus Johnson had on that touchdown, New York City, see you in a minute, going to be there, all that stuff. And then tonight in the college football playoff reveal, they interviewed one athlete today, one college football player, and it was Kenneth Walker, the third from East Lansing, Michigan. Nils, and have you woken up yet? Is this just a college football dream? Is this really happening?
I was listening to the radio driving home, and they were announcing it, and I got kind of went an extra 15 miles an hour after they announced we were, Michigan State was third. It just being in the conversation is just so beneficial. I don't know how the season's going to end up, but being there in first rankings at number 3, every kid that you're recruiting in the country is like, hey, Michigan State's legit. Yes. And you can't do any better than that. Michigan's 7th, Michigan State's 3rd, Ohio State's 5th, no one else. Those are the things as Coach Tucker has done. I think he's stacking chips every day. It's only going to get better.
It's a good way to put it. Kyle Priestley over here. Really appreciate Kyle with the super chat tip and support sponsorship. And he has a question, or he's got a point. He says, Dabo made Clemson. Zero reason to believe that Tuck cannot turn Michigan State into the same thing. constant national championship threat. So excited for the future. That's what Kyle posted along with the super chat. Nils, your thoughts about that? You agree, disagree?
I agree 100%. I think that, if you think about it going all the way back to the 50s was Diggy, and then Duffy took it over, and then there was a large gap. The 70s, if you think about the history of Michigan State, right? So the Woody Hayes, throwing us under the bus, getting thrown on probation, from Michigan State's good between 73 and 76 are not very good because they're on probation. But, Gerald Rogers wins that Big Ten title.
And by the way, Woody Hayes went on probation in the 50s for some slush fund things that were going on in the downtown quarterbacks club there in Columbus. I think Woody Hayes was pretty clean by that time, but for him to turn into Michigan State, or at least he said he turned to Michigan State in, was he doing that out of fear? Didn't want the 60s to extend into the 70s? Sure.
Michigan State's always been the unknown. That's the problem with Michigan State.
Dangerous.
That everyone's like, okay, it's always been the most dangerous. And like you said about Coach Tucker, he's the most dangerous man in college football. He is the most dangerous man in college football.
Yes, he is. I think I called him that this summer, did I not?
That's what I said. You said this summer. I was giving you credit for that. You said he was the most dangerous man in college football.
Yeah, my hearing's not very good sometimes. But Patrick O'Rourke, also appreciate your support. Thank you, Patrick O'Rourke. Dangerous man. They're talking about this, the choke thing that happened when Mike Morris tried to strangle Kenneth Walker III. Can you imagine if somebody did? Can you imagine if a Michigan State player did that to a Michigan running back? Can you imagine the uproar from all the echo chamberists and all the knitting circle people? I was going to say something else, but not only the fans and the social media, but the people it'd be torches and pitchforks right now. If a Michigan State player did that to a Michigan player, and if it were a Michigan Heisman Trophy leader, can you imagine? That would be, but I'm not seeing a lot of that. I know a lot of Michigan State fans have put that on social media, but I'm not seeing it retweeted. I'm not seeing people talk about that. I'm seeing Rich Eisen talk about this, this is holding. It's a still photo. You've not watched football. This happens. Now, if you have video and somebody's tackling somebody, yeah, that's holding. And Michigan State was called for holding. Everybody knows that. But he's got a still picture of somebody grabbing his shirt for a second. We don't know the context of the play. Play might have gone for a loss. I don't know. And he presents that as some sort of proof of shenanigans. Now, I agree that. I'll say that the sack fumble, I think probably there was not enough there to overturn it. That's my opinion. That was not the opinion of the replay officials. So I'm not going to sit here and just blindly look at things in green and white glasses and say that that Michigan State.
But they overruled it though. So they saw something that we didn't see.
I don't know. They see the same replay we see, is the way I understand it.
Do they?
Yeah, that's the way. When replay first started, they had the same TV replays that we see. So to overturn it, if they'd called it down, I don't think they could have overturned that either. But I thought that was a good break for Michigan State. But like I said in the VCast today, if you give them a touchdown there, Michigan would have lost anyway. They would have found a way to lose, I think. And the belief is real for Michigan State late in the game, and the conditioning thing is real also. We've seen every game this year, Michigan State's been the stronger team. Tucker talks about we're going to be the team that is punching the hardest, the longest, make them quit, all those things. That is good and sounds good, rah-rah, in August and everything, but we are seeing the rubber meet the road in that regard. Michigan State is punching longer and harder. And I'm not saying they're making people quit, but that conditioning, what they've done with a lot of science behind a lot of those things, it is proving itself out in game day in the fourth quarter. Michigan State dominated the late.
Nutrition, though, I think that's another thing. You can have all your workout. I think that Amber, I can't remember her last name, the girl that came from North Carolina, did an amazing job.
It's all part of it. Hey,
and she communicates well, I think, with these guys.
Yeah. Nils, anything else before we let you go?
No, trying to grill some hamburgers for my daughter here. She came right home from driver's ed, so we'll have another person driving in the house. It's great.
Sounds great. Enjoy those burgers. Nils, appreciate it as always. You be good, all right?
Okay, you have a good night.
There he goes. There he goes. Very happy Nils Deco. Amazing time to be a Michigan State fan. Congratulations to all of you that are Michigan State fans. And yes, it's going to be tough. Purdue's going to be tough. Purdue's going to be difficult. Ohio State, of course, is going to be difficult. But back in 2015, when Michigan State was making a run, then they lost to Iowa. I'm sorry, they lost at Nebraska. And everybody just kind of assumed when they go to Ohio State, that's going to be really difficult, especially with Connor Cook not playing that day. But Tyler O'Connor, his one day in the sun, orchestrating that upset over Ezekiel Elliott and the rest down there at Ohio State in the rain. Got it done that year, and then next thing you know, Michigan State's in the playoff. This year, similar. Everybody's just assuming go down to the horseshoe and lose. History has it that Michigan State has been somewhat of a spoiler to Ohio State national championship hopes in other seasons. Michigan State's going to try to repeat that this year, and that's the week before the Buckeyes played the Wolverines. Ohio State's good. They won't be looking ahead because Michigan State is a legit threat, but first, Michigan State's got to play Purdue, and that's going to be difficult. Let's go to question number 2. Spartan Nation for Parts Unknown. He says, question, what are your initial thoughts on Purdue? What is their biggest strength and biggest weakness? Strengths, I like the quarterback, O'Connell. Threw for 375 against Iowa. I posted that on the Underground Bunker message board last night that I think that, I'm not Gil Brandt. I'm not a pro scout, but I'm looking at that guy and the way he processes. He's a guy that'll make 3 reads and boom, he's on it. He doesn't. He anticipates, and he's not late with throws, and he's accurate with throws. He processes. He has a mind, a quarterback's mind, and a good arm. I don't know if it's an NFL arm. I don't know if you need an NFL arm. I guess you do. But his ability to process is dangerous against a shaky Michigan State pass defense. Now, I've quoted stats in the past about Michigan State's pass defense, saying what they were in terms of yards allowed per pass attempt, which has been a pretty good number for Michigan State most of the year, but then they went out against Michigan, gave up 400 yards passing. 93 came in one fell swoop in the first 4 minutes. After that, McNamara only averaged 6.3 yards per attempt. Still had some nice chunks, 18, 19 yards over the middle 6 or 7 times. The numbers go up, but you got that guy attempting 42 passes, whatever it was. Still pass defense. Leaky in some areas. Angelo Gross, they really went after him. Struggled when they boiled him down into man-to-man. Now you got O'Connell thrown to David Bell. David Bell, the number 1 receiver in the Big Ten. So that's going to be difficult. Defensive end, Karlaftis. Good defensive end. Reminds me of Kenny Willekes. Strong and quick and slippery and doesn't stop. He's not tall. He's not as tall as Aiden Hutchinson. I think he's more like Willekes, like I said. Mel Kiper Jr. has Karlaftis, their defensive end, as his tied for number 3 on his big board in terms of defensive end draft prospects for this spring. He's a big timer. The other guy's pretty good too. I don't know his name. Number 99, the other defensive end, he's good. Karlaftis is number 5. You'll see a lot of them this Saturday. Weaknesses, I'm still looking for weaknesses. There have been some questions about their run defense, but they've improved their defense. Question number 3 from Minneapolis Spartans. He says, is the bend but don't break defense actually a macro strategy, or does it just mean we have a mediocre pass defense that improves with a shorter field paired with a strong run defense? That's the question. Hold that thought. Let's bring this gentleman in.
Call from.
Big move.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press.
All right, let's bring him in, ladies and gentlemen, out of Jackson, Michigan. Big movie. Ron Armstrong. Ron, how you doing, man? Happy football season.
What's going on, Kyle?
Hey, it's great to have you. I've not spoken with you on the phone since Saturday, and you were right. I was wrong. You were telling me last weekend when I was like, man, this Michigan this run offense, it's physical. They're just going to pound you with tight ends and pound and pound and pound, and eventually the dam's going to break, and I just don't see State withstanding that. And, the 4.25 is going to get tested, and we'll see what that looks like. And you're like, man, what you can just go ahead and share whatever you want publicly. What did you share with me? What did you caution me about?
That I just didn't think there was a physical group up front. I thought they were good with their technique, but they just didn't line up and maul anybody. And if you go watch the film, they did a lot of shifts and motions and stuff like that to create, good blocking angles, but they just didn't line up and pound you. So I really wasn't worried about that.
Well, you were right. Michigan State stopped the run. In the pre-snap read, I made the point, stopping the run, everybody says that's important every year, but stopping the run in the red zone was crucial. And when Michigan State got in the red zone a couple times, Michigan State stopped the run. And you got into the midway through the second half, when they tried to run, Michigan State was frequently, consistently holding it to gain of 1, gain of 2, gain of 0. Got to the point where it's 3rd down and 3 at the Michigan State 31-yard line. Michigan's down by 4 points, 2 minutes to go. That is Harbaugh territory. That's everything he's always wanted to be and build. Is 3rd and 3. Yeah, we're going to pound it. And if you happen to hold us to 2.5 yards, we're going for it and pounding it. There's no way you're stopping us when we run it 2 consecutive times. 3rd and 3 at the Michigan State 31-yard line. Rivalry game, down by 4. 3rd and 3. What did he do? Came out and empty and threw the ball. Threw an incompletion. 4th down incompletion. I'm thinking this is Harbaugh. This vaunted running attack, and Michigan State chased them out of their bread and butter and made McNamara beat them, or try to beat them, and McNamara did a good job, better than I'd seen from him all year. Didn't know he's capable of that. To his credit, he put up some numbers, but right then, at that moment, and the receiver was open, they're inviting McNamara to beat them, and he missed the open receiver in the end zone on 3rd down. But for Michigan State to chase them out of the ground game at that point, Ron, I did not foresee that script to take place.
Here's some interesting stats about, say stats are for losers, but they didn't trail a lot in that game. And for them to have 48 pass attempts in a game that they were leading the majority of the game just speaks to the fact that they threw the ball a whole lot. And they didn't really, I don't think they were really fully committed to that run game, if you ask me. So I think early on, they looked at those D tackles inside. I mean, look, Slade and Barrow and those guys inside did a heck of a job. Mm-hmm. But some of that is, I sent you the message. I think they took the cheese. Mm-hmm. I told one of my buddies, man, that game looked like when a bad shooter comes out and hits his first 2 or 3 3-pointers and he spends the rest of the game gunning. Yeah, McNamara hit some throws and made some plays. But if you're Michigan, that's not how you win football games with him throwing the ball 44 times. Especially when going into the game, your bread and butter was your 2 backs and pounding the football. I mean, it felt like to me that they got a little bit of fool's gold with McNamara hitting those throws, because when it was money time and it was in those throws, you had to have them. How many of those did he knock down? He didn't hit any of those throws. When they had to have it, where was that confidence in making those throws? And I thought also a little bit of when it's in the middle of the game, we're playing a ton of man. I told you the easiest way to make a bad quarterback look good is play man, because the reads are easier and it's simple to see. There's clearer pictures. Late in the game, we dropped into that zone, and he didn't read the field clean. That was a pick, and his game's over. So. Again, I thought they fell for a little bit of, they got out of character, and I think there was a little bit of fool's gold early. And you get a lead. If you got a run game you believe in, you have a lead. Lean on the run game. They still were pass happy. So I think some of that was, but I told you also, can Harbaugh resist getting involved? Could he resist it? And I just don't think he could. Bringing in the freshmen and all, that's tailor-made. That has his fingerprints all over it, because that if the OC is not going to make that decision to sub in the freshman, that has to come from the head coach.
Absolutely.
So,
there was some talk that the quarterback might have been in the tent at that point for when they fumbled that mesh exchange. I think at that time McNamara might not have been available, but I don't.
Well, here's the thing.
That. Yeah.
They had been going back and forth with the freshman the entire game. So if they're talking about that one series, okay, but what about the other series when he was out there and they kept rolling him out there? I'm not going to excuse that and say, well, that one time when they had been doing it the entire game, that seems like a cop-out to me.
And, the other thing, McCarthy had not been much of a thrower. He threw deep against Rutgers, I think, once, or somebody, Northwestern, I think, late. But he came in and threw the ball against Michigan State, threw a touchdown. 3 out of 4. So they tried to break tendency by having him run more. Having him pass a little bit more. But, that's like you're saying, they, kind of intruded on the progress there a little bit and ended up biting them with that one. I got a question here I want you to chime in on. Minneapolis Spartan says, is the bend but don't break defense actually a macro strategy, or does it just mean we have a mediocre pass defense that improves with a shorter field paired with a strong run defense. Pass defense is still a work in progress. There was a little bit of trouble at the safety position, and Michigan went after that a little bit this week. But in terms of bend but don't break, people talk about that like that's a bad thing. And I think Michigan State, and I'll let you talk about this in a minute, Ron, but I'll go first. Bend but don't break, I think with Michigan State, they try to be whatever they need to be in a given week against a given opponent. When they played Miami, they had a lot of respect for their receiver. I think his name was Rambo and others. And they, Michigan State had some unproven corners. Ronald Williams was basically, making he didn't start in that game. He had some trouble against Northwestern. He got beat deep once, and that was his first start in college football. Has a lot of ability, and he's been rounding into shape really nicely lately. But they played Miami. They didn't want to blitz a lot. They didn't want to chase De'Aaron King into plays out of the pocket. They didn't want to give up anything deep, so they played a lot of soft zone and made them complete 7 or 8 passes and drive to get their points. And they drove a lot, put up some yards, but they only ended up with, 16 points or whatever. That was bend but don't break that day against that receiver and that quarterback, and what Michigan State wasn't sure about at the corner position. All right, so it changed through the course of the year, and there was some bend but don't break against some teams. But, they played a little bit more press against Indiana. Now, in this game, so this is my point. People talk about bend but don't break like it's a bad thing. That 3rd and 5, 93-yard touchdown pass to Andrell Anthony. Michigan State was in man-to-man, and it was a little bit of an exotic kind of, the way I saw it, Ron, you can correct me on this, but they put a running back out at wide receiver, and corner Chester Kimbrough went with him. And usually if a corner goes with a running back, it indicates zone, because usually if you're in man-to-man, you're not going to waste a corner on a running back. You'll put a safety on him if you're going to be man-to-man, or a linebacker. When you put a corner out there, the quarterback's looking at it, and he sees a corner on a running back, that indicates zone. Now, Michigan State flipped it. That was they were fibbing the tell there a little bit. So then the running back comes back into the formation and becomes a pass blocker, I think. But at that point, Kimbrough changes his assignment to the number one receiver, the receiver widest toward the sideline, which was the tight end, who was attached to the line of scrimmage to the offensive line. He was not split out, but he ends up covering the tight end in man-to-man. So he shows zone and then ends up in man-to-man, which is, it's just a little thing, but it's something of an exotic. They're in man-to-man, and he's covering the tight end. And I could see Michigan State's thinking, Michigan had been leaning on throwing 3rd down passes to the tight end all season. So Michigan State's like, we'll show him zone. If he ends up on a tight end, we got a corner on a tight end. He'll cover him. We'll be fine. So he covered the tight end all the way down the sideline. And when Anthony caught that pass from that bunch coming across that crosser from the right side, by the time Kimbrough saw that was going on, he couldn't get off of his man-to-man coverage and help chase it down. So that's why there wasn't more speed support from the other corner, because he got ran off of man-to-man. My point is, if Michigan State had truly played bend but don't break at that juncture and played zone on 3rd and 5, they might have given up a little 10-yard pass and tacked it in front of them. Then Michigan's got 1st and 10 at the 14-yard line. That's a situation why teams play bend but don't break, because if you play bend but don't break and keep it in front of you in zone, things like that are less likely to happen. And that was a little bit, if it looked strange, if you've watched Michigan State all year, if it looked strange to see a wide receiver get out like that, that's because Michigan State doesn't usually play that kind of tight man-to-man that far away from the goal line. Am I correct about that, Ron?
Absolutely. There's a small. It's all about risk versus reward. It's 3rd and 5. You're risking getting off the field right there. You're giving up a big play. I think most of the time you're going to see us in sort of a zone where we're going to rally to the football and tackle.
Sure.
And that way you don't give up big plays, because most of the time coach is going to emphasize that first thing, we can't give up big plays. Big plays get you beat. Mm-hmm. Because as long as the offense has to snap the ball again, you got a chance of them making a mistake, and or just getting a stop and getting off the field. So absolutely, it's rare in that situation we're going to play man. I think honestly that was one of those things we were trying to throw an unscouted look at them. We hadn't shown that all year, and we kind of guessed wrong, if you will, that they were going to the tight end. They just had the right play call on for a concept that we had shown all year. And they hadn't shown that to Anthony all year either.
Exactly.
So,
they were unscouted on that one too.
Yep. So they kind of, they guessed right, and sometimes that happens.
Trenton or Xavier Henderson said after the game, he's like, yeah, they completed that pass, and he just ran right by me, talking about Anthony. So if Anthony had been on film making plays like that, Henderson would have been more aware of him and taken a different angle.
Different angle, absolutely, because he definitely took that a lot flatter than you would expect, with a guy showing that kind of speed. But again, it hadn't been on film.
Right. So credit to Michigan for sneaking that one in there. Any chance that Michigan was keeping him a secret to try to explode it in this game? Do you buy into that?
No, I don't buy that. I mean, I don't think you.
Because you use him in Nebraska, right?
Good enough.
They almost lost in Nebraska. You don't keep that guy for the Michigan State game when you're in danger.
Yeah, I don't know if any team's good enough that we're going to say, hey, we got this guy in the ace in the hole, and we're going to pull him out in that game. I don't know anybody that good or thinks they're that good. I mean, maybe that group would have that kind of attitude, but it would that would even surprise me for that school down the road to have that kind of attitude. You just put the best guys out there, and now do I think the kid's been coming along and they're like, hey, you know what? It might be time. I think he's ready now. That's more likely the situation.
By the way, McNamara, those 93 yards, that was 4 minutes into the game. Hey, he was on the money. They got it done. That was a great explosive play. Michigan State was out of character with the type of defense they played for that play, and it bit them. 93 yards. Now, McNamara, for the rest of the game, according to my math, averaged 6.3 yards per attempt. 6.3 yards per attempt, to your point. That would, if you go the whole season right now, if you're giving up 6.3 yards per attempt for the year right now, you would rank number 3 in the Big Ten in yards allowed per pass attempt, which is the stat for pass defense, not total yards allowed per pass attempt. So his other 41 passes, and he had some good ones, but it took him 41 passes to put those up. And I'm not saying you want to be giving up 340 yards passing all the time. And I'm not really sure about numbers because figures lie, liars figure. And like Bill Miller, the former Michigan State defensive coordinator, used to say, you can get numbers to say about anything you want them to. And there are numbers that are a little bit conflicting in terms of Michigan State's pass defense. They're one of the worst in the country in terms of yards allowed, but yards allowed per pass attempt, they're number 4 in the Big Ten. So I'm still not sure what to make of it. But Michigan State does need to get better if they're going to be playing that much man-to-man. The safety position, Angelo Gross is new to that position, and they attacked him. And I'm sure Angelo's, back in the film room and back in practice trying to work on that and to become the best version of himself that he can be. And when Mel Tucker talks about screws that need to be tightened up and things that need to be improved upon, Michigan State has a lot of those things. Ranked number 3 in the country in the college football playoff today in the rankings reveal, but Michigan State has a lot to work on. During the bye week that came out, after the bye week, run defense was improved, run blocking was improved, tight end blocking was improved, Ron. I didn't see that coming. I've been waiting. That's been a weakness. And both those guys, Hunt and Hayward, delivered real big blocks on that outside zone that got sprung for 57 yards touchdown. Kenneth Walker, the third. Tight end blocking is improved. They're working in practice. They're not done improving, Ron.
Absolutely. And we talked about it last week that I thought the interior linemen were going to be the key because if you know how aggressive Michigan played with those their D ends, and you saw late in the game, I thought we started getting a lot of push from our interior guys.
Yeah.
But you're right. I thought our edge in the run game, particularly, I thought our edge guys did a really good job of, getting into guys and moving, giving Walker a clear lane to run through. On a couple of those plays, I mean, it just washed things down completely. So you're right. You could see the work getting done during the week, making those daily deposits and it's showing up on Saturday.
It's exciting. So Michigan State number 3 in the college football playoff initial rankings today for the 2021 season. What were your thoughts when you saw that? And I know it's just the beginning. It's week 8 and everything, but what does that mean for the program? We were just talking to Nils Deco about that, and he's all excited about just the additional branding that gives to the program. Your thoughts in your heart about Michigan State when you saw number 3 up there ahead of some of those other schools, and then where Michigan State stands right now. What are your thoughts?
I think, first of all, I'm always on board with us being ranked high. I mean, you beat a lot of people and you're in that spot. So especially when you consider going into the year, you had some publications ranking us, the worst teams in Power 5 conferences and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to go into the season and they're telling you you're going to be one of the worst teams in Power 5, you finish last in your division or whatever the case may be.
Wow.
And then here we are the first week in November. You're 8-0 and you're ranked 3rd in college football playoffs. Don't try to downplay that now.
Right. Yeah.
To quote a famous quote, it sounded good. What do they have to say now? Isn't that what Xavier Henderson said? It sounded good at the beginning of the year. What do they have to say now? So I'm not going to be one of those guys that'll say, well, it's only we still have 4 games left. Absolutely, we still have 4 games left, and we're 8-0 right now. We're ranked 3rd right now. I'm going to celebrate them now. Coach Tucker always says, live where your feet are. Well, our feet are firmly planted at number 3 and 8-0, so that's where I'm living right now, and we'll adjust accordingly. But our fans shouldn't be downplaying that and all that kind of stuff and acting like it doesn't matter, because it matters. Because I'd rather be 8-0 and ranked 3rd than not.
Absolutely. This is riding time. Like in wrestling, you get credit for riding time. No matter what happens in the season, the brand is gaining some polish right now.
For sure. And to touch on that, give you an example. Wake Forest is ranked 10th, and when they got ranked 10th, I think my son mentioned it. And now every school in the Power 5 has been ranked in the top 10 at some point. So you ask Wake Forest if it matters to their program that they're ranked 10th now.
First time in school history.
That's uncharted territory for them. So you think we shouldn't celebrate being ranked 3rd? Man, I'm all on board with it, and I don't. In terms of even if we finish the season and split, go 10-2 or whatever, no one can say we weren't. We at some point this season we were ranked 3rd, and we were 8-0. That matters.
Mm-hmm. I mean, people still talk about when Dan Mullen and Dak Prescott had Mississippi State number 1 in the playoff. That was the very first playoff ever revealed, the first year. People still talk about that.
It still counted. They were still number 1 at some point.
Yeah. And Michigan State, Nils Deco made this point on the Underground Bunker message board over at SpartanMag.com last week, and it did not occur to me, but he was, he's been watching the World Series, Houston, the Braves, and Michigan State was playing Michigan on Fox on Saturday, and on the World Series, they promoted it nonstop. Like every 2 innings, there's a commercial, with all, the Michigan State helmets and, live, big moments of the past, the rivalry, just a little 20-second thing over and over. That's Michigan State. That's Michigan State branding that Fox is doing for you in front of a 12 million audience for the World Series or however many it is. And then Michigan State comes out and plays Michigan, and it's a classic game. And lo and behold, 9 million people watch it, the highest rated television audience for a college football game this year. That promotion during the World Series by Fox helped, but it was a solid weeknight promotion of Michigan State football. Then 9 million people watch it. Those uniforms looked great. The helmets looked great. Mel Tucker looked great. Kenneth Walker III looked great. The stadium looked great. It looked like Big Ten football. Big audience. Michigan State wins. Now, 2 days later, the college football playoff revealed, there's Michigan State again. I mean, there's riding time for the program right now, and it's driving some people nuts, but Michigan State is benefiting from it in a year that was supposed to be a rebuilding year. Michigan State fans are all saying, wake me up. This must be a dream. It's not a dream. It's East Lansing, and it's happening, Ron.
Absolutely. And I think, there's folks who don't know exactly how to process what's going on, because let's face it, I mean, this has been a really quick turnaround, and I say enjoy it. Yeah. Take it all in.
All right.
Especially because you don't listen. I think there was a lesson to be learned in this. We were here before with Coach D'Antonio, and I don't know if any one of us, if we enjoyed it like we should have.
Right.
It was a whole bunch of angst and, well, what's going to happen next year? Man, live in the moment and enjoy this. Let's be okay with being say, hey, yeah, we're a good team. We're 8-0. Let's live in this. And if we lose a game, then we'll adjust it. But right now, we're 8-0. Let's go.
And a dangerous 8-0, because Mel Tucker's getting a lot of push right now. I mean, people are seeing the fruits of the labor, and it's labor that you mentioned early on that you saw. You saw a lot of bricks going up. You saw a lot of construction going on with that program, and now it's coming to fruition. And the recruits, it's caught their eye, and he's a dangerous, he's a force, And
you know, this is something that's funny, Comp, and this is one of those things that fans think. You hear this all the time when a team loses or they don't play well. Like, well, it's going to be easy to get those guys' attention this week. You know when it's easy to get a guy's attention? When all the stuff you told him was going to happen comes true.
Yeah.
When you're like, hey, if you get in here and you do this, this is going to happen. You get in here, you work on your on your technique, this is going to happen. You work on your nutrition, this is going to happen. And you see all these things that coach told you, you know, 2 years ago or a year ago when you saw things first started. And then you look up, it is November 2nd and you're 8-0, and you go to the position meeting and the coach is banging on you because, hey, man, listen, we can get better. Remember all the stuff I told you was going to happen? Look up. Look where we're at. And we still can get better. Let's get back to work.
And interesting, during the game at Miami, a quote that Mel Tucker had to the players, I think at halftime, was, we're built for this. We can handle this. We've trained for this. We're built for this. They went out and did it. And to your point, the confidence that must breed. And then this Michigan game, down by 16, Tucker, leadership on the sideline, clapping, keep chopping. Now down 8, we're built for this. Now that resonates even more. And, hey, one sideline was believing. The other one was hoping and hanging on. And I tell you what, those players respond to Mel Tucker. Do the Michigan players respond to Harbaugh? Maybe some of them do. I don't know. They've been having a good season up to that point. But, man, Tucker rallied them. I was watching Tucker when they came out of the tunnel at halftime, down by 13 or whatever it was. Michigan State ran out of the tunnel. And maybe I've not noticed it before. I know there's usually you jog out of the tunnel or whatever. They ran out with a purpose. It looked to me, maybe it was my imagination, but I noticed it. And things weren't going all that well at that point in the game, but they came out different. And I was watching Tucker up and down the sideline before the second half started. And he was going up to individuals, words of encouragement, patting them on the shoulder. You didn't have to be there to know what he was saying. He was saying, we got this. We're in this. Keep punching. Keep chopping. All those things. And they did. And at the end of the game, Michigan State was chopping pretty hard. And Kimbrough getting in there. Brantley getting in there with that interception, playing cover 2 like a pro. Cloud, he was a cloud corner on that one, right, Ron? And one-handed leaping interception.
Looks like some smash concept. He baited. It looks like he baited the quarterback in the thing. He was going to jump the hitch and came off that hitch and was underneath on that corner route. And, one-hand ASCII ball game. Tip the bartender and waitresses on your way out.
A quarterback who's had a little trouble making reads this year. And Michigan State had not played a lot of cloud cover 2, right? And in that game, maybe once or twice I saw, but got it done on that one. Like you said earlier, played some zone, got off the field with that one, a leaping interception. And Brantley did that, freshman out of Florida. 9 million people saw it. It's something. Hey, other contributors in that game. Who else caught your eye from Michigan State? What are some of your other analyses from Michigan State's 37-33 victory over the Michigan Wolverines on Saturday in Spartan Stadium?
Something that we've talked about, but there's two position groups that just week in and week out they show up and do things that you have to have them. They probably don't get noticed much, but our receivers blocking downfield those guys are just getting after it. And you got to give Coach Hawkins credit for that because those dudes, they get into their start blocking. They take pride in that. And you can tell because it's not just one guy. It's the entire group of receivers that they know when they're on the field, they got to put a hat on somebody. And look, when you got Kenneth Walker, just getting away, most of the time it's going to be good enough. But they're getting into people. And something that also went unnoticed, our tackling in the secondary. Hey, man, look, Gross gives up the 40-yard pass, but he gets the guy on the ground, and they end up settling for a field goal. That open field tackle went completely unnoticed, and that might be a game saver.
Okay, that was a third down on that deep number 3 receiver out to the deep corner. After Michigan State at that point had tied it up 30-30. And Michigan State made a good play on first down, good play on second down, plays going crazy, third and long, and he hits, I don't know who the receiver was, but he was the number 3 receiver against Gross on a deep corner. And tell me about that tackle. I didn't notice it.
I mean, just to angle him towards he angled him towards the sideline, and got the near shoulder, the near leg, and got him on the ground. I mean, listen, it's a big play, but again, yards don't get you beat, points do. And they got in the huddle and they had to run another play. That's just play the next play, get the guy on the ground and get in the huddle, and those things go completely unnoticed. Crowds going crazy because it's a 40-yard completion, but it didn't change the scoreboard. Little things that go unnoticed. Just, hey, don't panic, get him on the ground, get in the huddle. And I thought Gross made a great tackle out there. I mean, because Halliday's not going to chase that guy down.
Right. And and on that one, Michigan State was trying to bracket Halliday and Gross on the number 3 receiver, right? And Gross kind of got turned around on that one, if I'm not mistaken, right? Well, I don't think Gross. I
thought Halliday was. To me, it looks like he was trying to play the sticks, and the receiver, got depth and then leveraged. Looks like then he out leveraged Gross on that and turned him around a little bit. But the other thing I was going to talk about is I want to talk about Tillman in the corners.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about getting guys ready to play.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Chaz has had a good year. Has made some big plays, but just was a little bit off. I thought he was getting lined up on one play. Another one looked like he was kind of a little late with his technique, but just didn't have it that day. And to be able to call on Chuck Brantley to come in and play, championship caliber football. When you had to have it, that just shows you the kind of work that he's putting in with 4 corners, because I saw Lowry out there making plays, and that just, to me, that just shows you the kind of work that they're putting in with these guys during the week. Because I said it on the board that right now, if you look at the way corners play, I like the way Williams is at the press point. He's probably our best guy at the press point. Something he struggled at earlier in the year. Not thinking he's one of our better guys at the press point, real physical. But at the top of the route, Lowry just eats guys up at the top of their route. When they're coming out of their break, he's just eating guys up. And if you go watch how often guys are stumbling out of their break or in the other team's crying for pass interference, but he's in perfect phase, perfect leverage. That's not interference. He's just eating guys up at the top of their route.
How much of that is film? How much of that is film study on his behalf to read a receiver and know where he's going and take that step?
That's film study. That's technique, and that's just ability to get to your landmark before and know where you are on the field, to have that awareness that, hey, this guy's coming out of his break. And there's tells you'll see on film. Some guys drop their hands. Some guys look down at their feet. If you saw that drill that Hawkins is doing wide receivers, he's tossing the tennis ball.
Yeah.
That's to make sure when you're coming out of your break, your eyes don't drop. Keep your eyes up, so you're not giving away you're not tipping your routes. But a lot of these, college kids, they're not pros. They still have these habits. They're looking down at their feet, or their head will pop all the way back. There's all kinds of tells, and you can see that Lowry, man, has put the time in, because he's chewing guys up at the top of their route, and it's every week. And to have that confidence,
he left this game with it. He tweaked himself again, right? Didn't he get a little dinged up?
But to have the confidence that, look, we have 4 corners that in crunch time we can go out there and feel confident that they're going to make a play. And then how about 30? Is it Justin White? Yeah. Justin White comes in and provides a spark, on the blitz and nickel. So I mean, that back end is getting some big time coaching, and it shows up, week in and week out. And folks will complain about the yards, but it's clear, that we're not really concerned with you moving the football between the 30s. That's just, congratulations. You moved the football between the 30s. But if you're not putting it in the end zone, I mean, you're great. You won the time of possession or something, but you didn't put it in the end zone. And you saw that, play a part in this game.
Mm-hmm. And Lowry, a guy that comes in, transfers from Louisville, redshirted at Louisville last year, did not have any playing time. So for Michigan State to evaluate him in the portal and say, yeah, we want that guy, had to have gone back, high school film and networked with whomever. But looks like they struck a good one with him, and we've not seen him at his best yet. These guys are still, Ronald Williams, Kimbrough, and Lowry are still getting their feet wet in college football. Just because they're coming from they're not former starters like Horst and Kenneth Walker coming through the portal. Those guys were, hadn't played much. They were still new in their development. Ronald Williams is a senior, I understand that, but he was a high school quarterback that went to junior college, played wide receiver for a year, then played defensive back his second year of junior college, got recruited by Alabama, went to Alabama, broke his arm during preseason camp, got on the field in November at the end of the season in mop-up time a couple times, then went in the portal. So when he started against Northwestern, it was his first college game, legit, right? A lot of ability, but his slope of improvement is what you're talking about. You're liking him in press coverage right now, right?
I do. And you can look at, there's something else you can notice, that game plan wise, he doesn't see a lot of balls thrown his way. And what's interesting, I watched the film against Michigan. There was one late in the game. There was an out route to Andrew Anthony to the wide side of the field, and it was airmailed, into our sideline. If that thing is thrown on the line, it's probably a pick six for Williams.
Repeat that again. I'm sorry. I'm sure the listeners heard it, but I didn't catch it.
Late game, I know it was Michigan's final drive or the drive before that. They threw a wide side out route to Andrew Anthony, and McNamara airmailed it over the head into our sideline.
Yeah.
And if that thing is thrown on the line, it's probably a pick six for Ronald Williams.
Okay, I didn't notice that. All right.
And I think they made a point not to throw at him that much because he's out there eating their receivers up. That's a big corner. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you noticed, that's a big kid playing corner.
That's why Saban liked him. That's why Saban liked him, right?
And he's just getting better. He's long arms. That's his long arms, real physical. And you could just see the improvement and the confidence. And when you have a game like that end on an interception by your corners, those DBs, man, they just walk around with that much more confidence. The technique works, the film studies working, all the things that you talk about during the week in individuals and in your position meetings, you could point to it like, hey, this is what happens when we're sounding our concepts. Everybody's where they're supposed to be. Let's keep chopping. As Coach Tucker, let's keep chopping. Let's get back after it. Now the task becomes stay disciplined. Let's not go out there searching for interceptions. Let's not go out there searching for big plays. Stay disciplined in our concepts, and the big plays will come to us.
You know what else is a good thing is that consistently we're seeing on this Michigan State team, you'll see somebody rise up and get a role out of nowhere, like Justin White. Tucker talks about, hey, every week in practice, it's a clean slate. Not a complete clean slate, but there's competition in practice. You don't bring it, you might get left behind. If you do bring it, you might get a role. You're on the field, and we're seeing guys rewarded with that. All of a sudden, someone's on the field like Justin White, or, Brantley had gone a couple of games without getting much playing time. One snap, and maybe did not play in one of the other games. Gets in this one, and Tucker said he had a good week of practice. So the message is there's no days off during the practice week. Meanwhile, guys are learning at quite a clip. I got a question here from Sparty Matt. Appreciate his contribution. Sparty Matt is talking about that interception. We touched on it earlier, but let's spend a little more time on it. He says, on the final interception, was Michigan State in cover 2 and Brantley had flat responsibility but read the quarterback's eyes and made a gutsy decision to make a play on the ball, or was he always supposed to drop there? We talked about it a little bit earlier. Yeah, he's in cover 2. He's clouding that corner. He's squatting right there and not carrying a receiver deep as you would in cover 4 or man-to-man to go with him. Or cover 3 if you bail down the sideline on something like that. Like you said, it's a smash concept. You have a high-low. That's what smashes the low, and the high is it stretches him, and the safety's coming over the top to take it. So they're thrown into that cover 2 hole. What else can you say about that, Ron? About what was going on there with that cover 2 interception by Brantley? I would add that Michigan State had not played much had not played cover 2, had not squatted the I don't know if squat's the correct term, but had not had the corners playing cover 2 much in the game. Just a couple times that I'd seen. So Michigan State changed it up on that one. What corrections can you make to what I said, and what would you add to that, Ron?
No, it looked. I mean, you're right, but to me it looked like Brantley. I don't know if that was just film study, because he never committed to covering the underneath route. I mean, he kind of looked like he kind of throttled down just a little bit. But if you watch the film, he never really fully committed. He didn't hug that underneath route. He was halfway in between, and it was a quick, he didn't even have to flip his hips or anything. His hips were already open to the sideline. So he had vision on the quarterback. and on the tight end coming out on that corner route. So it was kind of an easy play, but I don't think Chuck ever committed to covering that underneath route.
Do you think the quarterback even noticed him, or do you think that the quarterback assumed that Chuck was hanging on the tight end?
I think he assumed. Pre-snap, I assumed, you look at that pre-snap, okay, this is cover 2. He's gonna hug Anthony, and that's gonna be an easy throw into that window.
You think the quarterback read cover 2 and thought that hole would be open and was thrown to that cover 2 hole?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
All right. And as far as Purdue goes, I think you mentioned earlier this week that you were taking a little bit of a look at them. I'm impressed with that quarterback, O'Connell.
I think they do some good stuff in their route combinations. Kind of, you know what? I'll tell you what's neat about it. It won't be anything that we didn't see with Western Kentucky. I think some of the stuff there'll be a lot of carryover. Okay. If you watch Western Kentucky's film and some of the route combinations that Purdue will run, they use that Bell kid a lot like Western Kentucky did the kid that had 20 receptions or whatever. So I don't think we'll get caught off guard with anything they do with their route concepts and the way they want to pass the football.
By the way, Western Kentucky's won 3 straight. Their last loss was Texas San Antonio, who's in the top 20 now, still undefeated. I'm expecting Western Kentucky to go ahead and beat Middle Tennessee State, Rice, Florida Atlantic, and Marshall. I think they might end the season with an 8-game win streak. I'd like to see them do that. I kind of liked their style. I liked the way they came out and competed. I thought I was impressed by that.
I mean, you know what? But that's one of those teams that, no matter what the score was, they were just going to do what they do and just, live with the results at the end. And at some level, you can respect that. They didn't let the score in the stadium and the situation get them out of character. They just kept slinging it. And, to their credit, it was good enough for them to stick around.
Your thoughts on Michigan State's pass defense as a whole? Statistically, it's easy to criticize it, but what are your thoughts about it?
I think it's good enough that it's going to take a really good pass offense to beat us. You're going to have to be 4 quarters, make plays for 4 quarters, and play mistake-free football for 4 quarters, and that's just and then you're going to have your defense make enough plays to have it matter. Because our offense is going to find a way to make some plays. Coach talks about playing complementary football. Well, I think part of that is we can put up points so the defense doesn't have to be perfect. They just have to make the plays, make enough plays at big moments, that at the end of the game add up. We're not going to go out there and shut anybody down, but we're going to do enough to keep you from winning the game. And I think you'll see the same thing. If folks are out there expecting us to go out and, shut Purdue's offense down, you haven't been watching us all year. But if you expect us to, make them drive the length of the field, they're going to hit some throws. That's just the nature of what it is. But I do expect at some point we'll have an answer for that pass offense because they don't run the football well. So we won't really feel like that's a threat for us, So we'll have something for that. And look, Bell's a good receiver, but every week you're going to play somebody that's good in the Big Ten, so I don't think they're worried about that. That'll be a shock to the system. But they're a good football team from what I've seen on film. But it won't be anything that our kids will be surprised about, and I don't think our kids will take them lightly either.
Mm-hmm. And for this Michigan State pass defense and the defense as a whole, I'm after last weekend, I've become a little bit more of a firm believer in some zone coverages and the bend but don't break and coverages with 2 deep safeties, zones with 2 deep safeties, because that kind of prevents some of those from getting out. That's just my hindsight 2020 Monday morning quarterback view on things, and that might be the way they attack things against Purdue. And does that allow you? And he's a good quarterback that'll make reads and throws and can dissect a zone, a good zone. He showed that against Iowa. But what Michigan State has that Iowa doesn't have is an offense that can answer back. When you've got K9 and some of the things going on offense, can that change the way you do things on pass defense? Can you be, does that dictate a little bit that how you choose to go about coverages?
No, I think you just stay sound to, stay true to what you do. But what happens is if that offense, you don't want to get in a situation if you're a quarterback where you feel like you're playing against the other offense.
Yeah.
You want to always stay focused on playing against the defense that's out there. But what happens is if we're out there, if our offense is putting up points, now that quarterback, it seeps in his subconscious that he's got to make a play.
Yeah.
He's got to match what our offense is doing. So instead of just taking that easy check down, now you can get in a situation where he's forcing that throw, and now there's an interception there. When you're playing against an offense like Iowa, where there's not necessarily a threat that they're going to put up points, that quarterback's not feeling the same pressure to have to make that risky throw. He'll take the check down to the back or the tight end and just get in the huddle. So it's our offense that makes the defense, that helps that defense out by putting up points. Now the other team feels like they have to match, and they start pressing a little bit.
And what did you think about Michigan State's pass rush? Having a little trouble getting home. Michigan's pass protection was pretty good.
I thought Michigan did it. They had a pretty smart game plan because, and I think we're going to see more of this. If you watch our team, if you will, the secret sauce of our pass rush are our D tackles right now.
Yeah.
They push the pocket, and I thought Michigan did a good job double teaming our D tackles and leaving our ends one-on-one. And I think you're going to see more of that moving forward, that you'll see the double teams. Our ends are going to have to win one-on-one matchups because they're not leaving Slade and Barrow and those guys one-on-one against guards and centers, because they've shown through 8 games or 7 games of film that they can win those matchups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Slade, I thought Michigan's weakness was the left guard, no matter who played. I thought Barnhart was a little bit better than 77, but Slade was, when he had one-on-one opportunities against that left guard, he was continually putting a dent in what they were trying to operate. Slade has just been a solid player all year. Barrow coming around. Barrow coming around, making that big play down in the red zone early in the game. 2 consecutive big plays, then had that pressure on third down for Michigan's first field goal when it's 7-0. They're down there knocking on the door.
Yep.
I think they ran the ball, and they had something going to the outside, and Barrow took on that center and just put his hand to his shoulder and just knocked him aside and pursued down the line with quickness and made a tackle, because they had a play brewing around the corner to wrap it and hook it and get it outside. And Barrow just took that play over and stopped it for no gain. Then third down on that play. This is early in game, people. You might remember they're driving at 7-0, about ready to be 14-0. And Barrow just made that play. Now it's third down, and Barrow beats the right guard off and gets a pressure incomplete. But the right guard and right tackle were slow on the snap. Some people thought they might not have known the snap count. I think it was crowd noise. I think it was crowd noise down there to the deep end that fouled up Michigan in the red zone and a key third down play. Crowd noise, they're late. Barrow gets off, pressures the quarterback, incomplete. Crowd noise, big assist on that third down there, leading to a field goal and a 10-0 deficit rather than 14-0. The deep end. Impact.
Absolutely. And that's a big play. I mean, look, you never know how games turn out, but it, psychologically, it feels different down 10-0 than it does 14-0.
Yeah.
It just feels different. You get it. We went right down the field and we scored. Now so it's 10-7. It feels like, okay, we're right back in this. We're just down the field goal. Even though, it's a 4-point swing, it feels like your offense has to do less to get a field goal than they do have to get a touchdown. And I don't know if it's just psychological, but it feels different.
And especially that one. Go ahead.
And your defense runs off the field. They got to win. Hey, we forced a field goal. So that's a big thing, a psychological boost for your team when things like that happen.
And
that was huge.
And not only that,
back to your.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Count.
No, you go ahead.
But back to that initial point, I think you asked about the D line. Look, our interior guys are playing at a big time, at a winning level, and if we can get just a little bit more out of those edge rushers this game, I think we'll be fine.
Getting back to that stop in the red zone, also remember that Michigan State had just thrown an interception, deflected interception, at the 45-yard line, and and Michigan State was thrown out to Harold Joyner on that one, and he had a play. If he'd have gotten that ball off, I don't know if, it was to the left, so it's hard for Peyton Thorne to go sidearm on that. But the blitzer, I think it might have been Dax Hill, got a hand on it, and number 90, the guy that was choking Kenneth Walker later in the game, I think Morris had the interception. Personal foul on Jared Horst. They're setting up shop first play of the drive at Michigan State's 30 or 35-yard line. So it's not like they'd driven the length of the field and then Michigan State got them stopped. That was sudden change, and it's about to be 14-0. And Simeon Barrow came up big, and the deep end came up big. And yeah, like you said, you look back, you don't know what the turning points are, but that was one. That was Michigan State fighting off the ropes there a little bit early.
Absolutely, that's when everybody, it's okay. Everybody exhale. It's 10-0, but let's calm down. Defense, just pick this up. It's offense. Go out there and get it back. And everybody can relax a little bit.
And Michigan State next possession, 1st and 10, first play, nice little 15-yard out there to Reed or Naylor. Then next play, another one. They went chunk through the air, and then that set a tone too, that you're not going to just cave it in the end zone against Michigan State down in the red zone, even after a sudden change. Secondly, you score, we're coming right back at you. That was kind of a tone thing going on there. And Michigan State's done a lot of that when teams have stung them. They've come back on offense on the offensive, and it's been entertaining to watch. Got a question here from Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights. He says, how do you assess Michigan State's offensive line play against the Wolverines? The offensive line has to carry us through the tough part of the season. Do they have the goods to carry us through the tough part of the season? I would say, I'll go first. Luke Campbell came in and struggled, of course, gave up a sack, and then the sack fumble that almost put a big dent in the happenings. He only played about 7-8 snaps, the least he's played all year. There have been other times when Luke Campbell's come in and, in my opinion, has been better than Horst. I think he's been a plus overall, but he came in and struggled in this one. Matt Allen was offensive lineman of the week at Michigan State this week. And talking to Kapilovic about it today, Michigan State's offensive line coach, and he said Matt Allen did a really good job of, communication up there. Because Michigan came out with a lot of different assorted fronts on the defensive line that they had not shown. They began the game with 4 down linemen. Hadn't done that all year. Not only was it 4 down linemen, they had 2 stand-up defensive ends on either side of those, basically 6 defensive ends. I mean, Hutchinson is a stand-up. They call him a linebacker, but essentially he usually plays a defensive end type of technique. But when you have 4 down linemen, now he's outside, and he's still a defensive line size and strength type of guy. And 55 or more, I think his 55 started. They call him a Sam linebacker, an outside linebacker, but he's a big defensive end also. 4 down linemen plus those 2 guys on the outside. It's 6 defensive linemen for the first play of the game. Michigan came out to stop the run. And not only was it 4 down linemen, it was a bare front. They had the guard and the tackle, the guard and the center all covered, which prevents you from getting a double team movement on anybody. Michigan State came out first play of the game and still gained 7 or 8 or 9 yards on the first run. Then they gained 7 or 8 or 9 on their second run. Michigan State showed that, undeterred, that they'd come out and do that. I asked Kapilovic about that a little bit, and he said, against Indiana, Michigan State's offensive line was kind of bothered by all of Indiana's stemming and shifting at pre-snap. What are they in? What do we need to adjust to? What play do we need to get into? And Kapilovic said, in this game, we're going to run our things, and if when we run them, we can adjust. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he wanted Allen to be less cerebral, trying to figure it out and just get into the play. Now, there were some plays Michigan State ran later that were specific bare front beaters that were very successful and very impressive. But Michigan State setting the tone, getting after it in the run game early. An offensive line that I've not been sure about. They've had some good moments this year. They came back strong from that bye week, and they proved a lot after a shaky performance at Indiana.
Look, I thought, and that's what we talked about before, sometimes you got to line up and run the play and just and see if your guys can block it. Sometimes you got to beat the guy in front of you, and going to a 6-man line. Sometimes I honestly think it clears up the picture for the linemen. You know what I'm saying? When there's a 4-man line or a 3-man line, there's linebackers at depth. Sometimes that's a little bit more tricky for them to figure out who's coming, who's not. But you got a 6-man surface. It's hat on hat.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I think that helps out. Make it a little bit easier. And then when you come to the sideline, like, okay, they were in a 6-man surface. What plays do we like against this? Where can we attack this? And I thought when we ran that little, you call it the bear beater that Walker scored on, you better believe that they had that ready to go when they saw that look again.
Yeah. And
you know what I mean?
And Michigan they began with 4 down linemen. They did not do a lot of that, but they played a lot of 3 down linemen, which they had done against Wisconsin, but not much else. They're a 2 down lineman team with 5 defensive backs. They came in with 3, and a lot of times they were in a bear front. They wanted to stop the run, but they also wanted to go and play their base 2 down linemen, and then Hutchinson and Ojaba standing up, and a couple of linebackers, and then 5 defensive backs. But they tried to they tried to change personnel groups, and that's why Michigan State kept catching them with that quick snap. And one of those snaps, Ron, Michigan State a couple times snapped it in 5 seconds. They snapped it with 35 left on the play clock, which I've never seen before. And I posted about this on the Underground Bunker also, that, when Chip Kelly and those guys were first starting to do the ultra fast tempo right after the NCAA changed the rules on ball placement and all those things, Oregon was really going fast if they snapped it at 30 seconds on the play clock, 29 on the play clock. And then it became fast, like Kevin Wilson in Indiana would snap it maybe with 31 left. I mean, 9 seconds is about as fast as I'd seen it. Utah State, when they came to Michigan State, 9 seconds. Western Kentucky go 9 seconds. That's as fast as I'd ever seen it. They did it at 5 seconds. And I rewound it. I'm like, what the? It's not like the guy in the field has to signal the clock to start. It automatically goes to 40 and starts counting down, right after the whistle. I asked Kapilovic about that also, and he said there were times when the official put it down and put it in play quickly. That's got to be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Michigan State was ready to play fast if they did that, and they were. And it's not like Michigan State was just like doing a quick spike muddle huddle thing, like hurry up and get it snapped. Michigan State would get into 2x2, to get down and run a couple of routes. It was usually a run play when they did it, but Kapilovic today said that when Michigan State did it and had success with it once or twice and saw that it was a problem for them, then the buy-in was great. So the communication was urgent that, if we're doing that on this particular snap, people were hustling to it and getting it done. And there's a conditioning component to that also.
Well, if you remember in the spring, they were running a lot of tempo practice.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
They were running,
yes,
and we
fast,
talked about it. It was just, I'd never seen anything like it. How much tempo in practice it was. They were running the play, and the next group was. The next group was at the line. At the line.
That's what the spring game was.
Ready to go, and the first group wasn't off the field yet.
It was fast. And you and I talked about that. Michigan State's not an up-tempo team. What does that accomplish? You and I talked about that in the spring, because in the spring game, the green-white game, they were running plays extreme tempo, and it served a purpose in this game against the team that was trying to.
That's not something you can wake up game day,
right?
Yeah, that's not something you wake up game day and suddenly start doing. That's one of those things where you have a call. Some teams, they make a call, and that's what their tempo call is, and then they'll have a play tag with that tempo call. So everybody knows if they hear, Seattle, Seattle 60, they know that Seattle's tempo and 60 is the off tackle. So nobody has to look to the sideline. Everybody knows it's Seattle 60, and they're running. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that you put in the spring.
Yeah.
So game day, nobody has to look to the sideline. The quarterback's yelling Seattle 60. Everybody sprints the line because they know Seattle means tempo and they know what 60 is.
Yeah. And they got it done with no false starts, and they were winning some rounds of speed chess there against Michigan. Michigan looked bad.
That was a thing of beauty. That was a thing of beauty. And to do it off of short yardage plays when you knew the personnel they were going to have on the field was going to be to your advantage for the comp. That's not only in the moment, coach, and that's in one move ahead on the chessboard.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have this play, but the play after this is going to be the one we want to beat you with personnel.
Yeah.
You got your short yardage team out here. You got your short yardage team out here, and we're going to come out the next play, and we're going to hit you with, fake reverse, stutter go deep ball against your big front.
Mm-hmm. And the details.
You're
How about fourth?
Details.
How about the 4th and short and the 2-point conversions? Hey, in the pre-snap read, I mentioned that 4th and short could be a passing down for Michigan State because I had a lot of I had a lot of respect for Michigan's interior defense and short yardage. They came out and hit Naylor, should have been a touchdown, but a beautiful play call there. And then 4th and 3 had to have that one on the deep. That outside route was.
And how about that ball to Reed, man? That was a great ball, man. Like there's some listen, when you talk about how do you come back from a game when you're down, 16 points, with 6 minutes in the third. Every play that we had to have, our kids made.
Offense and defense, and blocking and tackling.
Offense and defense.
D-line, corners, everybody.
Every play that we had to have, like there wasn't one play. Even look, think about this. How often, and we start getting into the psyche of a team and the belief, believing in what you're doing. Michigan fumbles, and Ronald Williams kicks the ball out of bounds.
Yeah.
And guess what our team does the next play?
What was it?
They get off the field. They force a field goal on the next play. How many games have you saw where a team misses an opportunity for an interception or a fumble and they give up a touchdown the very next play because they're kicking themselves about the play before?
And after that ball was booted out of bounds, Mel Tucker's clapping. Remember that? Do you remember the visual of him? He's like, forget about it. Next
clapping,
play.
taps Williams on the head.
Next play. Now, when they get in the film room on Sunday, it might be a different story. But right now,
it might be a different story. At that point, it's not a time to panic and admonish the kid for trying to make a play.
Yeah.
Hey, it's okay. Play the next play.
Yeah.
Film study. Hey man, fall on the ball right there. We don't need to scoop and score. We need the ball. Learn it. It's an opportunity to coach them up after the fact. But right in this moment, we can't panic. And if you look, Coach talks about we won't flinch. You see Coach Tucker out there panicking, looking,
No.
Things. And I know fans are like, well, I want the coach to get after the refs. Nah, man, because your team sees that.
Yeah.
It's okay, guys. We're good. Just keep playing. Keep chopping. Keep playing. We're good.
Man, it's impressive right now, the leadership there. I mean, it's impressive. On all levels.
Absolutely.
Media, social media, recruiting, donors, X's and O's, sideline, halftime, timeouts, everything. And then the little details.
This is, I think this version of, and look, and I said this before, Comp, and I'll say it again. I don't know how this thing ultimately turns out, but I told you that, this dude was special, and you could feel it around the building. You could feel it around the program. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to tell you this is the version of Michigan State that everybody always feared.
Yes, afraid. Fear.
When we had our act together, I think this is the version of Michigan State, of Michigan State football that was always feared. Like, what would ever happen? Because you think about it, we never had a problem getting the Charles Rogers and Duckett's we always had good football players. Yes. But getting everybody to pull from the same side of the rope, from admin all the way down to the janitor, everybody pulling from the same side of the rope, is something that we always haven't necessarily had. Mm-hmm. And the point that, to me, that brought it all home was seeing Coach D stand on the field and just take it all in.
I missed that. Expand on that. What did you see there? I didn't see that.
That looks like a guy that recognizes that the house is all in order.
Yeah.
And taking it in from a point where, look, he beat them when he was here, but when you're in it, you can't enjoy it quite the same. So I think Coach D was taking it all in. But the fact that he was on the field, to me, signifies that everybody in Michigan State is pulling from the same side of the rope. He's not out there, some other school, when they got a new coach, the old coach was kind of sniping in the background, undercutting the guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some other school, their former coach was the AD, and he was coming out to practices suggesting personnel groupings and how to run particular plays, and ultimately end up coaching the team in the bowl game.
Right.
That's not what's happening here.
Right.
This guy is just he is what do we need to keep pushing, advancing this thing? I was a third leg in the relay. I'm handing the baton, and we're all going to get a gold medal. We finish first. What do we need?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I know he was in the stands. he was enjoying himself in the stands, and I heard that he was on the field at the end. I saw Channel 6 interviewed him on the field after the game. But what did you see about him on the field? I didn't see. Was that part of the telecast? Was it on the TV broadcast?
No, it was a picture. I just saw the picture.
Okay.
Like the video of him, there was, the kids were celebrating in the south end zone, and you could see Coach D on the field looking at it, just taking it all in.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that was just, I'm like, that's Michigan State is, we're all pulling from the same side of the rope when you see stuff like that.
Yeah. And D'Antonio the boosters love D'Antonio. You know what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
if he's going to come to them and say, look, this is important, it'll resonate. And at some point, Michigan State,
sure.
with all the success that Michigan State's having this year with Mel Tucker, I don't think Mel Tucker's going anywhere. The more they win, something could, the LSU might become more serious about it, and there might be, a big offer and things like that. But I think State's going to get it done one way or another. But with, when all the season ends and, Tucker's going to, I would imagine, get a PJ Fleck type of deal for Michigan State. Michigan State's going to need to do that, and that's what he's worth, because you're worth whatever somebody's willing to pay you. I think that'll be part of it, but also Tucker's going to want some of the furniture rearranged a little bit. Like, okay, look, when we need this, I'm serious about this, and if I want to do that, I don't expect any flack. There's going to be some little things here and there that probably get I don't mean like people getting dismissed or anything, but just a little bit more. Okay, I've been here for 2 years. This needs to be a little different. That needs to be a little different. If I do this,
and that comes with, look, you don't know. Here's the thing. You don't know sometimes you don't know all the things you need until you've been through it enough.
Yeah.
Last year with COVID, it was kind of tough to tell what we needed and what we, where we could improve or what have you. But, you're 8-0 and you get through the season, like, look, man, we got this done. But what if we had just this little extra boost to push us, who knows where the season turns out. And, you finish the season, this season off, and folks are more inclined to listen to you. Like, okay, yeah, coach, let's get it. Let's do it. And especially when you have a guy, you have Allen on, you have the AD, you have the president, you have the former coach, you have the boosters, you have everybody pulling from the same side of the rope. It's not, Coach Tucker doesn't have to have that pulling teeth conversation. It's, hey, coach, what do we need?
Right. And
that's
and you got Izzo pulling in that direction too. And
you have Izzo, who is, the Godfather, saying, hey, look, football is drives the engine here. Never mind the fact that, that program has been, rock solid for last 20, 25 years. Izzo's like, hey, let's make sure football is where we need it to be.
And someday,
and to me, man, and you could feel it, before the season started. You could feel it. I mean, I didn't even want to get into predicting wins and losses because I didn't know that part. Yeah. But I know it felt different. And if you were on campus, this weekend, we talked about it last week. With it being Halloween weekend and Michigan week, man, campus felt. Ooh. You could feel it. Ooh. You could feel that. I mean, I was walking around. And, with a few former teammates, and we were talking to each other like, man, I've never seen it like this.
Me either.
Like,
it was
I've
amazing.
never seen it. I mean, it's just, it was the energy and you could just.
Were you out Friday night or Saturday or both? Which night are you talking about?
Saturday.
Saturday night?
Saturday night. I was out Saturday.
It was crazy.
And it's just, I mean, we were.
It was a good crazy. Downtown, despite what people have heard about Cedar Village and everything else, but downtown East Lansing Saturday night was perfection. In some ways, some people there might be some others that might not have been thrilled about.
I don't like crowds per se. I'm kind of just standing in the back and watching things, but that was neat to be a part of, man. Just seeing all the, seeing college football the way it's supposed to be with fans in the stands and tailgates and, us getting a big win, and it just felt great to be a part of. But at the same time, I'm telling you that environment. I know we're always a little bit juiced up when it's Michigan. It's always a little juiced up when it's Halloween. Yeah. But it was something even a little extra that just, I'm like, something special was happening here, man. And if you're around it, you can tell.
Yeah. And the uniforms and the helmet and the Fox promotion and the big noon and game day and all. I mean, it was like you said, people have always there have been people that have feared that Michigan State could do something like this. And there's some programs that have little sayings and, slogans like Fear the Turtle at Maryland. That's cute and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But Fear the Spartans is real. There have been people there's a reason Michigan did not want Michigan State in the Big Ten. They didn't want them at the party.
And listen, you know what? I can tell you this. There's a lot of folks that benefit from Michigan State not being where we think we could be. Wisconsin benefits, Iowa benefits, Michigan benefits. Ohio State, I don't think they really care. Ohio State's going to do what they do regardless.
Sure.
But I think there's some programs that benefit, from Michigan State not holding up our end of the deal.
Yeah.
And when we're good and we're doing things, you better believe it makes it more difficult from some of those other programs. Michigan doesn't want the competition. That's just their way of, they'd rather not face a good Michigan State. But Saturday, man, this weekend, not even this weekend, last week, like you talked about with the promos from the World Series to, game day and big noon kickoff and all these things, that was a home run 7 days for Michigan State football.
Yeah. And it continues to tonight with the rankings revealed tonight. Continued tonight
with the rankings. The
Heisman campaign going on.
Absolutely. Now here's the thing. This is the next step in the evolution of a program. Show up and beat Purdue.
Yeah.
That's the next step in the evolution of a program. Show up and beat Purdue.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's not like Michigan State has this great talent advantage to just go out and just get it done like the Duke Blue Devils in basketball have been in some years. I mean, Michigan State's got good talent, but it's gonna. That's why Tucker is like he's hitting the pedal harder this week for the reasons you just mentioned. And people are going to talk about Michigan State, and if Michigan State loses, everybody will be like, yeah, they never win after the week after Michigan. Man, Michigan State's been winning at a steady clip after the Michigan game for the last 13, 14, 15 years.
For sure.
12-3, I think I saw. 12-3, I think I saw.
Right. So yeah, that's gone.
And Michigan's
if
the
we
team
don't
that's
win,
been
it's
losing.
because we didn't play well and Purdue made more plays.
Yeah.
But it's something I talked about this also, Con. I'm not really worried about that because of Coach Tucker's approach about the process and not necessarily the results. If you just follow the process, the results will come. He's not banging on the results. He's banging on the approach and the process, in the way we go about doing things. And that doesn't lend itself to roller coaster performances.
There are a lot of chips on the table right there are a lot of chips on the table right now, though. I mean, the difference between
absolutely.
If you're 7-1 right now and you lose, it's like, oh darn. You're 8-0 and you got a chance to do something and you lose. It's like crap. Really had a chance to really get a So
but sure, but that's going to be the case. Do you want? Here's the thing. What are you playing for? You want to be a part of playing for things that matter, or not? And I think our kids want to be a part of something that matters, and they've been preparing for this. That approach of stay in it, trust the process. Focus on the task, not the results. You don't go out there and you. I think it's easier to look. They're young people, so there's always going to be a little bit of that. Focus. Quite wondering they're going to be dialed in and focused at all times. They're young, 18 to 22-year-olds.
Yeah.
But I feel good about our approach to the season and each game. And when you have some guys that just can outplay X's and O's, you got Walker and some of these dudes. One play, you're right. One play can change the whole complexion of the game. So that kind of top end talent does kind of bail you out too.
Sure. Also, when Michigan fumbled that play, go ahead.
But I would just be surprised if there's, if our kids don't come out and play well. I'll be surprised. And that's not to say Purdue won't make any plays and won't be a tough game, but I would be surprised if we're sleepwalking.
All right. That fumble when they botched up the mesh, the big fumble when Michigan State got the ball back with like 7 minutes to go. You go back and look at that, a key play that happened in that play. Yeah, it's a fumble. But Panashuk beat, I think it was a left tackle. He came from left defensive end. The right tackle, I'm sorry. Panashuk beat his guy, decisively. That's why when the ball was on the ground, boom, he's on it. because he just whipped somebody's tail.
Yep.
You know, that was not an accident. It was a gift in some ways, but there was a victory up front on a micro level that produced that, which I didn't notice till I went back and looked at it. So Panasiuk did not make he didn't have the sacks and pressures like he normally did, but he won that play right when they needed it. That was big. As far as
absolutely, and we say this all the time when teams are like, "Well, we gave that play away." Well, you know what? Our guy had to be there to complete the play to make that fumble matter.
yes.
So Panasiuk winning was the other half of them putting the ball on the ground.
Right. And also, in terms of, you know, and there's a lot of talk right now about, you know, nationally and locally, and especially with Michigan fans that, Tucker's going to be leaving for sure. Even on the Stout show today, Lynn Henning was on, and Lynn Henning has always, you know, written the books about college coaches or Michigan State coaching changes and things like that. And he's talking about LSU and the same people that went after Saban are going to go after Tucker and all this. But a lot of people thinking it's he won't be able to turn that down, but he knows what LSU is all about, but and that might or might not be a good thing. I don't know. But, I mean, he loves Michigan State. He came here because he really, really liked Michigan State and liked the opportunity. I think you can see that he loves it more than he thought. A lot of the things, the history of Michigan State, and now the way things have rounded into shape with Alan Haller. And, you know, Matt Ishbia was right there rolling with all of them after the game. You know, Izzo and Alan Haller, all those guys. I mean, it's a tight-knit ship right now. And the more they win, I mean, it's going to get interesting a little bit with somebody someday, whether it's Florida or Texas or whoever comes after him, because if he wins like I think is capable, that's going to happen. But I tell you what, Michigan State's putting on a good show for him right now.
Look, you worry about that kind of. Listen, I'll let the folks who, you know, can ultimately do something about that, worry about that.
They don't seem worried. Those people don't seem worried.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They don't seem too worried about it. So, but, you know, I think Coach Tucker, you know, he preaches about, you know, be where your feet are. So I'm you know, that's the mantra. And so he's here, and until otherwise, that'll be what that is. But I think some of that is wishful thinking on the part of other people who can see what we see.
Yes.
You know, and they're hoping that if they talk about it loud enough, it'll become either a distraction or a story or something.
And go ahead. Yeah.
You know, so I don't even know how much actual information was out there about Tucker and LSU. Is it, you know, Feldman led with that story a few weeks ago, and everybody's regurgitating the exact same thing. Yeah. Like, if you notice, the story hadn't changed one bit. Has been any additional details or anything like that. It's just been the same thing.
Right. And you and I talked about this last week. If you're Mel Tucker and you know you're staying in Michigan State, you don't come out and say it right away. You let that thing ride a little bit, because that increases your sway, and it increases your Q rating down south, where you're going to be doing a lot of recruiting. The more that's talked about, it's a good thing.
Because now your name is getting mentioned.
Yes.
You know, in LSU territory, in Georgia territory.
Yes.
So you're going down there to recruit.
Yes.
They just made your name ring out just that much more.
Right. Got a question here this is also from Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights. He says, do you know if the staff sent the choking incident with Morris to the Big Ten? It was much worse than the Golston incident, he says. I don't know if they've sent it in or not. That was not asked this week. That would have been a good question to ask. I probably should have done that at the press conference. My bad. But your thoughts about the chokeout attempt by Morris. And Nils and I were talking about this earlier. If Michigan State player had done that to a Michigan player in that game, do you know how all over the place that would be, and how outraged people would be writing their congressmen and congresswomen about it? I'm not hearing much about that. Are you?
No, and you know why? Because
all we're hearing
we
is about
don't
the officiating
move like they do. Yeah, we don't move like them. So if our coaching staff did send it to the Big Ten, you won't hear about it, because we're not. First of all, we don't cry loud publicly and call radio stations crying and all that kind of stuff. Our coaches are doing that. Second, you're right.
They're not sending the film. They're not sending the film to the TV stations in Detroit and saying, run this every day,
right.
Run this every day.
Right. We don't move that way. So if they did, you know, it's something nobody will ever hear about. You know, But you know, as a staff, there's always going to be calls, but not necessarily for the reason that folks think. Like, I thought there was a couple of holds on Horse that I didn't think were calls, and I guarantee you those were sent for clarification on what exactly he did wrong.
And there was one where he kind of had a hand extended, and it's almost like the official anticipated holding him through the flag. Is that the one you're talking about?
Right, absolutely.
Now go back and look.
'Cause he was inside the frame. He was inside the frame, and I didn't think it was a hold. And Horse even kind of had this incredulous look on his face, like, what did I do wrong?
All right, look at
And
that.
so
Look at that play, that hold. Okay, now go and look at the pass interference that Michigan wants so badly in the end zone. You know, that pass interference they thought should.
Yeah.
Look at Slade on that play, and Slade is getting blocked the exact same way. If that's a hold on Horst, then that's a hold on Michigan, and the pass interference is a moot point.
For sure.
And I hate having to go frame by frame on this crap with these people every single year when Michigan State wins, but that's the way it is.
For sure. But I think those are the kind of things you'll more likely see our staff sent to the Big Ten office, and not necessarily complaining, but clarification. So, why isn't this acceptable technique? You know what I'm saying? You'll get more of that, and in a way, it is kind of backhanded, like kind of taking an end run around and like, listen, this wasn't a hold, without actually telling it, you got it wrong. You know what I mean? You'll get those kind of films that'll be sent to the Big Ten office every week. I mean, every coaching staff does that. As far as something that you thought was egregious and maybe a dirty play, they may have sent it over, but you won't ever hear about it just because that's not how we operate.
Michigan wants to win those. Michigan wants to win those PR smear campaigns in the press. That's all they are. It's a paper program. They want to win that stuff. It's all about image, and trying to disparage other people. Michigan State, this thing happens. Everybody sees it, and it's not talked about. I tweeted that when I saw that somehow, some way, with Morris choking Kenneth Walker, somehow the Big Ten is going to find a way to fine Pat Narduzzi on that one somehow.
Right.
Somehow
the one thing I would add to that is if they ever complain about officiating when they win, then I'll listen.
They can't. We've been talking about this a lot. I mean, it's a strange disposition that they have as a people, Michigan fans. They are like. Did you see the Reese Davis thing? Did you see the Reese Davis? I didn't.
I didn't. What happened?
He went on NFL Network. He went on 9 minutes of crying about how Michigan was robbed, but he really seemed scarred.
Oh, you Rich Eisen? You mean Rich Eisen?
I'm sorry.
Rich Eisen.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Rich Eisen.
Yeah, Rich Eisen. Yeah, I saw it.
How about that? Still pictures of a jersey being tugged for an instant. What the? I mean, has he not? In football, I assume he's been watching football for a long time. I mean, cloth gets touched and snipped all the snap. If you drag someone down by the jersey, that's different. But cloth gets pulled all the time. If they called holding every time someone's cloth was pulled, I mean, and he thought that was going to sway some opinions on it, or people would be sympathetic toward what he's talking about. That guy, I mean, I lost a lot of respect for that guy on that one.
I can tell you what. Here's
show.
The thing. No, man. I'm thrilled. I love it. To me, when I see it, it just, man, all it is feeding that beast over there, that excuses beast that they have, and that thing keeps growing. As long as they have it, they're always going to be at disadvantage when they play us, because they can ever sit and look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, okay, how did we lose when we were up 16 and midway through the third quarter? How did we not, get a handle on number 9 and make them do something else? Nah, man, it was the refs. Great. So I don't care about them making excuses. Like, here's the thing. I don't need their stamp of approval that we beat them. The scoreboard and that check mark on the left hand side of the ledger and the W side is all I need. So if they want to complain and cry and all that, man, that's cool. That's fine. We won the game. I don't have to explain away wins.
Right. All right. Got another question here that I think that's well said. Also is from Jay Bannon from Sterling Heights. He says, who do you see stepping in for Naylor if Naylor's not able to go? Trey Mosley's been the number 3 receiver for a long time, so he gets more targets and more of a role. But we saw Montori Foster get out there. We've seen Christian Patrick Fitzpatrick get out there a little bit. Probably Montorie Foster and then Fitzpatrick behind them. Is that what you're thinking? Is that your read? Hear anything about Keon Coleman?
I think it's going to be by committee. I don't think you can just say this one guy's going to jump in and do, what Naylor, what they need, ask Naylor to do. I think they're going to have, they might have certain routes that they feel comfortable with Foster running, or certain routes they feel comfortable with Fitzpatrick running. So it just depends on because I wouldn't automatically assume that they're going to move, Mosley to that position. Mosley might stay in his spot, and they might just bring in another guy. It just depends. Like, you don't want to move two guys to replace one. So It might just be, they have that next man up, and Mosley stays in his spot. It just it'll just this week in practice that'll be determined. But I don't think you can just come in and say this guy's going to replace Naylor. I will say, folks will say, well, we won't miss him. Absolutely, you'll miss him, because going into the film, guys know that guy he can take the top off a defense.
Yes.
And you don't know if Foster or Fitzpatrick or any other guys can run like that.
Right.
So right off the bat, your DBs can play a little bit differently, knowing that they don't have that home run hitter on the other side.
Yes.
And they're going to have to force, the other guys to prove that they can make those plays. So the opportunities will be there, but going into your week of prep, it does change how you prepare, for an offense without that home run hitter out there.
And it'll make it harder on Jaden Reed, because if a defense is a single safety deep, if a defense is at single safety deep, that safety is going to be more aware of one than maybe in the past, because he's got to worry about 1 and 8. He might be able to skew to the other side a little bit more.
Right. Yep. So, but again, I think it's going to be, if anything, it probably makes Kenneth Walker's workload a little bit heavier. That would be my guess.
Okay.
I think you might see that you commit to the run a little bit more without having, and then you take your shots. So I don't think you want to go into a game and putting a ton of pressure on Mosley and some of these new guys to go in a hostile environment in Purdue and start throwing a ton of balls their way. Just let them ease into the game, run the football, and find some easy completions to them. Then we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm. Got a question here from Parker from Rockford. He says, were there any tendency breakers from a scheme standpoint that allowed for some of Walker's success, or was it merely a great game from a run blocking standpoint, coupled with the fact that our dude is a flat-out stud? Anything you see on film that was surprising in regards to the game plan that led to so much success? That's the question. I would answer, that play they ran for the 23-yard touchdown at the end to go up 37-33. The bear beater, we broke it down a little bit at Underground Bunker Message Board at SpartanMag.com. That was something new that they hadn't shown. I think they might have shown a variation of it a little bit last week that I noticed, because Northwestern, when they had a 75-yard touchdown run against Michigan with Evan Hull, ran something similar to that with a tackle folding, just a T-fold, just coming in one gap to the A gap. He's not coming across the whole formation, just tucking in to one little area, and they isolated the middle linebacker, blocked him. The other linebacker in the Northwestern game was out looking at the pass defense, or was in pass defense. Now, that was Northwestern. They did it kind of on an outside zone stretch type of look with wider splits. Michigan State did it tighter splits and an inside thing a little bit more, but that was new. And Kapilovic said, it's something they put in for the bear beater a little bit. So it's a new X's and O's, but the players that executed on that one, they're in the bear front, so they've got the center and both guards covered, and it's run to Jarvis's side. Jarvis got into the guy that was covering him, and I think it was Spate, a second-string defensive end. And our Curry's folding back behind him, but Jarvis got into that guy and turned him. And then on the other side, you have Matt Allen one-on-one with the guy, and that's kind of stalemating. It's kind of a stalemate, but our Curry folds in behind and joins that stalemate and double teams that guy. You've got a seal from our Curry, and you've got Jarvis sealing his guy this way, and it's a small alley, but it was an alley, and it was gone. 23 yards, great execution. Kapilovic said today,
it was a quick crease. I mean, he hit that crease really quickly, and that that was. I think that's what made the play. That hole opened up, and K9 split that thing.
Right. Yes.
And like you said, he hit that thing running 100. He's at top speed. It's over.
It was pretty. Because
he got on top of that safety. It looks like he got on top of that safety. And if you go back and look at that play, I think the safety lost him in the backfield.
Didn't see him?
If you watch, because if you watch, Walker gets small.
Yeah.
As he's going through the hole, he kind of gets small, and he pops out of there. And the safety's really late to react. And by the time he does, it's just a dive at his leg.
All right. And I did not notice that. I don't doubt that a bit. And Kapilovic said that, that Walker had some great things earlier in the year in terms of bouncing plays and making plays on his own. And Kapilovic is like, as an offensive coach, you're like, no, don't do that. Oh, okay, 50-yard touchdown. Not much we can say about that. But then was he looking to bounce a little bit too much against some teams that were starting to take that bounce away? So during bye week, that's something they talked about with Kenneth Walker. Sometimes you just trust the smoke and run through it and run into it. And that's an example. There were times in this game where he put his head down, got some tough yards, whereas maybe a month ago he might have tried to bounce and do a Barry Sanders type of thing. They wanted him to just put his head down a little bit more and get the tough yards. And on that one, trust it's going to be there. And like you said, he hit it quick. And it was executed, and they looked like a real run game outfit on that play. TKO blow. Also, in terms of
that was, and I saw the side by side. That was Big Ten championship game.
Yeah.
Ohio State, Langford. That thing. That was just, he hit it and bumped his head on the goalpost that just like you said. But that's trusted. There was no hesitation. He got the ball and he hit the hole, and it was game over.
Sure. And also in terms of not really a tendency breaker, but I would mention that, Michigan State being able to snap the ball at 5 seconds with up tempo was something new that Michigan didn't bargain for. That was kind of interesting and new. Did you see anything in terms of tendency breakers that caught your eye? I know that I'm trying to think of some other things, but Michigan State.
Yeah, I saw a couple tendency breakers. I saw us try to throw a couple screenplays to Walker. He hadn't been in. We hadn't used him in a screen game much going into that game. I think one got batted down. The other one was kind of a throw that turned him around. But that was kind of a tendency breaker, throwing the ball to Walker.
What'd you think about Michigan State against Hutchinson and the noise that he made? Tim from Oxford mentions, do you have an explanation why Hutchinson and Jabo seemed to be unblocked on several plays? There's a couple plays where Michigan State's running a counter boot where, they leave him unblocked and they figure they can outrun him and they're trying to get a pass on the other side. And, Hutchinson, I mentioned the pre-snap read. He's quick, he's long, and I don't know if you can run a naked to his side. And there was a time in the fourth quarter when Michigan State gained 9 yards, had 2nd and 1 around midfield and ran a naked boot to pass, and Hutchinson ran it down for a sack. Now it's 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 9, and they jump offside. Now it's 3rd and 3, and I think that's when the play happened that we just talked about. But Hutchinson on those plays, he's unblocked on purpose. In retrospect, they might not have tried to run a naked to his side, but Hutchinson was good, and Michigan State's tackles had trouble with him, and he's going to be a top 10 pick next spring. So they went against a pretty good one. Your thoughts on the Hutchinson matchup?
I thought. Pretty much what I thought of him going into the game. He kind of confirmed. I mean, he screams up the field. I will say this: he's a little bit more firm in the run game than I expected.
Yeah.
He's a little bit more stout in the run game than I expected. But and I thought again, and then maybe it's just the way they play it, but boy, those guys get really deep upfield, and that's kind of tough on your tackles. I mean, look. All year you play against guys that are not going 7-8 yards deep in the backfield. So you're feeling like if you can wall those guys off and get them up the field, you're winning. But that's where they want to go. And then they're both those guys are good at turning the corner. You think when they get upfield that far, they're going to loop around, but they do a good job of getting that inside hip turn towards the quarterback and turning that corner. So I'll give both 55 and Hutchinson credit for that. When they get upfield, they can turn the corner, bend and turn that corner. That's top shelf ability right there, and you just call it like you see it. But I thought it looked like he kind of wore out towards the end of the game. So I don't remember him, impacting the game late at all.
Interesting. And Michigan State's inability to hit the deep pass. They had the deep interception in the first drive, but Michigan was pretty intent on taking away that deep route, it seemed like. Is that right?
Yeah, they played. Yeah, they mixed up, single high and bailing. They did not want to give up deep balls. I mean, and look, that had to be the game plan going in because prior to that week, we hadn't shown the ability to, just put 8 to 10 play drives together consistently. So they had the same approach that we had, just looked a little bit differently, but they weren't going to give up anything over the top.
They didn't want to give up the big play because of last year and Michigan State's talent in that area. Meanwhile, they were running some bear fronts and fortifying things up. So they're able to do both a little bit. It seems like Michigan, there should have been some open areas at the linebacker level, maybe. I don't know. It's hard to put.
Well,
Go ahead.
Here's the thing. What I think there's a hole in our offense. We don't throw the ball in from inside the hash down the middle to the tight ends enough to make teams pay for playing their linebackers at that depth and playing bear front and involving their linebackers in the run game. You can get away with that when you don't really have to worry about the tight end on the play action or tight end delay. You can get away with that. I think as we progress, if we can find somebody that's going to threaten inside the hash, inside the down the middle of the field, then that'll help our offensive line out a bunch more. Or we're just keep making teams pay. But right now, I think that's the one thing that's missing is our throwing the ball inside.
Speaking of tight ends, there was one little tendency breaker, or just one little new wrinkle that I noticed. Michigan State's second run play of the game against the 4 down linemen. The second time Michigan State tried to run, they ran an outside zone against them, gained like 7 or 8 yards. And Michigan State had the bunch formation out to the left with Connor Hayward out there. And before the snap, Hayward would just kind of gently trot in toward formation. Not in motion for a jet sweep or anything like that. He just kind of came in a little bit, and what he did, that set him up for a block angle on the defensive end. So he sets up as a receiving threat out there in a bunch, but then comes in and he's got an outside in blocking angle for an outside zone toward him, which is easier for that tight end to make that block than it would be if he were an H trying to cross face and get him hooked. So I thought that was something new, and that was effective, and that was smart, and that's just great football. I mean, both teams were executing some great football plays.
And I'll tell you something else about that. You said how he's just kind of moving slowly inside to make that block.
Yeah.
By him not basically, because he's just kind of slow motion in that slow trot to that block when the ball is snapped, they won't call the crack back block on him.
Okay.
Do you remember last year? Last year they called that 2 or 3 different times against us.
Yeah. And that rule changed 3 or 4 years ago with the blindside crack back.
Right.
So he's already in position
Yep.
now. And yes, that's right. He stood still and let it come to him like a basketball pick. Now that I think
that's a little bit of the small adjustment that we got flagged for, I think 2 or 3 times against them last year, because we were doing that from our receiver motioning in, or our receiver basically at post snap coming down and setting the edge.
Right.
So this year we didn't do that.
Right. And that's a good rule. I like that rule. I mean, people are taking advantage on that crack back sometimes.
Listen, as a defensive guy, I think it's absolute, cowardly if you're peeling back and hitting blindsiding guys. I never liked that. I thought it was kind of a, just a real crappy thing to, just kind of a coward way out, man. You're peeling and blindsiding guys. Like, anybody can do that, man.
Mm-hmm. Got a question here from Brian in Huntington Woods. He says, how does the 4-2-5 that Michigan State's playing right now compare to the John L. Smith defenses with the bandit position? That's a question. I'll go first. It's the alignment. It's 2 linebackers and 5 defensive backs. That part of it is, similar. And John L. Smith saw that was the direction that football was going, and he was correct about that. Using the bandit, Serdarian Adams in the slot. That's basically what Michigan State's doing with Darius Snow and what Michigan does with Daxton Hill. Similar. You want a guy that can play the run and also play some pass defense in there. So the alignment is similar, but in terms of physicality and actually making something work, there's a lot of people out there that might run Tom Izzo's offense, but if you don't have the same quality control and all the things that make it work, it doesn't matter what the X's and O's are. So there was some sloppiness to the things that Smith's defenses did that's not flying as much now. But the 4-2-5, essentially, John L. Smith was on the right track with some of those things, in my opinion. Your thoughts about the 4-2-5?
I think there's 2 things. One you touched on, the 4-2-5. There's nothing wrong with that defense. I mean, people act like you're it's not sound or you're outmanned. There's nothing wrong with that defense. The problem, as I looking back, is the Big Ten hadn't gone to a passing offense as much as you see now. So we were playing big physical run outfits. And maybe Purdue and Northwestern, I think, looking back, were the only two teams that were throwing it more than they were running it. And even then, Northwestern could line up and run the football.
Yeah.
So it's not something I think that's ideal if you're playing against two tight ends, fullback football. That's not something you probably want to be in because you got a small body out there for 80 snaps. And I think that was probably more the issue, as big a contributor to us not being that good on defense. Is right back then the Big Ten was still, run heavy, play action, throw to the tight end, but off tackle football, and you're playing against small bodies. And, and let's just call it what it is. There's better quality of player out there, and, the coaching and the technique is improved, and guys are on the right page. There, a lot of things that happen with those teams, there was, lack of communication, one guy going the wrong way, doing the wrong thing, and spring a leak. So it's not that the defense that 4-2-5 has changed any. Offenses have evolved that now it's, you can get away with playing with 5 DBs. Heck, there's teams that are playing, nickel. They might be playing a 3-2-6, a bunch of snaps, playing dime. So I think it's the way the offenses have evolved that you need more guys that can run on the field.
Yeah. And they need to spread it around in terms of taking on those blocks. Michigan State will have Darius Snow in the box essentially as a linebacker one play, and the next play it'll be Henderson. They trade some of that off. They're moving targets a little bit. I will say that when John L. Smith, when Smealin was running that defense, one time Michigan State was playing Pittsburgh, and they had Serdarian Adams in the slot as the bandit against a 2-receiver formation. He's in the slot covering nobody. There was not a slot receiver, and he's out there covering air. And they're running, they're running 5, 6. They're running like 7 blockers against 6 in the box. Just wait a minute. That's when I was.
That kind of stuff.
That's when I gave up.
That's not a 4-2-5 issue. You know what I'm saying? That's not a 4-2-5 issue. That's an approach to defense issue.
Because it's 4-2-5, but essentially against some two receiver sets. Because Michigan would run 2 tight ends. Sometimes the tight ends would split out. You have to be flexible with those things. Sometimes you're obviously in 4-2-5, but based on the formation, you need to adapt and show a 4-3. You need to have 7 in the box, and that 7th guy, it might be Snow, it might be Henderson, but he's essentially playing like a linebacker, which becomes a 4-3, even though it's a DB doing it, who's weighing 210 instead of 220. But when Henderson would get up there and do that a couple times, he would run blitz to the outside and made plays out there.
Right.
Moving target.
And the other thing is you don't, if you're in your typical 4-3, and now they come out and dice or something like 2x2, and now you're walking out a will to be the get over the top of the inside receiver. I mean, I'm taking that, and Purdue would, they would run that
slot out.
They'd run that post. What's that?
The slot out with Tiller, you mean? Back
then? Yep, the slot out. They would run that slot out
17 times.
And they'd run a post, inside route with the number 1 receiver, and they run that slot out. And there's no way that a will linebacker is going to get out there below the numbers.
Yeah,
that's just a free 8 to 10 yards. So I mean, the personnel groupings in the offense made it necessary that you can't play for. Look, give Iowa credit; they still figure out a way to play that. But as more teams are getting away from 2 tight ends and fullbacks and all that, it just, I mean, you're playing with dial-up internet, and everybody else is using fiber against the fiber offense. You know what I mean?
Baylor did the same thing in the Cotton Bowl there for a lot of catches, a lot of pitching catches. But Michigan State, they stopped the run all day. That was an interesting battle right there. That was boxer versus slugger. That was interesting. Hey, Ron, I've had you long enough. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. Hope you had fun too, man. You good?
Absolutely.
Thanks for being here. I know
everything's great, man.
All the Michigan State fans are glad to hear your voice also on a happy occasion for Michigan State fans. And I appreciate talking to you also, and you sharing some knowledge with us, teaching a few things, also having a good time, Ron.
For sure.
There he goes, Ron. We really appreciate it. You be good, Ron. Really appreciate everything Ron brings to the table. Good friend, good friend of mine, good friend to SpartanMag.com. Always good to hear from him. Let me go through some of these questions real quick. Appreciate everybody hanging on and hanging with us and contributing and being a part of the conversation today. I had a question up here earlier from Mike from West Palm Beach. He's known as Spartan Spirit on the Underground Bunker message board. He said, what are the percent chances from a November 2nd point of view that Michigan State flips Keontae Goodwin in 6 weeks and he becomes a Spartan? That's the question. Keontae Goodwin, big-time offensive lineman from Indiana, committed to Kentucky, took an official visit to Alabama a couple weeks ago, took an official visit to Michigan State this past weekend. Big-time offensive lineman. You're asking for percentages. Kentucky has him. I guess I might say 30% Kentucky. I might drop that down to 25%. And I'd go Michigan State 32.5%, Alabama 32.5%, and the field 10%. Does that add up to 100? I thought Michigan State still has a good chance and had even a better chance before that visit to Alabama, because when Alabama recruits, they're no joke, right? And with Alabama being the recruiting shark in the water, I'm not comfortable going Michigan State above 33, but I think Kentucky's got a severe problem holding on to him. But I still would put Kentucky around 32. But Michigan State a little bit ahead, Alabama a little bit ahead. If you'd have asked me 3.5 weeks ago, I might have had Michigan State the leader, but Alabama makes that one interesting for sure. What do we have here? Look for some other questions. All right, Sparty Teacher. From somewhere in Albania, he says, where they honestly love Americans. Well, that's good to hear. He says, does the Michigan State program and supporters have the financial wherewithal to keep Mel Tucker for 5 years? I hope so. My answer is yes. Michigan State's got the money to do that. Ishbia is right in there rolling with those guys. I think if Tucker continues to show how valuable he is, Michigan State, I think some people aren't sure that they'll roll out, if LSU wants to pay somebody Saban money or Jimbo Fisher money, would Michigan State take it to that level? Depends on when. This year, right now, I don't think LSU's going to be paying Jimbo money or offering it, I don't think. It's an interesting question. There'll be some people that'll be like, no. There'll be some boosters that'll be like, no. And then there'll be some people maybe like his own Ishbia saying, yeah, let's get it done. I don't know. But he's looking like he does his job really well, and there's some value to that. You guys all know that. Terrence from Rochester, New York says, as always, we appreciate you and your staff for the great work that you do. Could you share some insight as to the offensive line, rotation, and perhaps the logic behind playing so many guys? He says, great line play requires so much cohesion and communication, which makes me wonder if the constant shuffling is disrupting that a bit. You're right about that. Cohesion and communication is important. I think there was so much competition that there was not much drop-off between starters and second stringers. They wanted to keep those guys in the fold for various reasons, and I think they thought that there were some positives to it in terms of keeping guys healthy and those type of things. And I do think there were some times when Luke Campbell outplayed Horst a couple of games here and there, but that certainly was not the case this past weekend. Campbell got in there a little bit, but they didn't. They got him out of there as soon as he was struggling, and almost blew up the whole operation. But they'll make use of Campbell later on. I know he's well respected, and he's played well earlier in the year. You're right, though. There was a lot of pressure when the backup tackle was in the game. Marlington, I think Marlington's from Austin, Texas. He says, how do you feel Michigan State will respond after a huge win as the Spartans face their toughest road test of the year other than Ohio State? It's interesting that we think of Purdue as the toughest road test of the year rather than Indiana. That's true right now, but we never would have thought that a month and a half ago. Gut feeling, I think Michigan State, it's a great question. Will they go and be kind of sleepy and kind of rusty? And I don't know if rusty is the right word, just kind of shoddy like they were against Indiana with all the penalties and false starts and all those things? Or will there be more precision and downhill intent and force like there was against Michigan? I think they'll play better than they did against Indiana. I think they'll play better than they did against Nebraska. And they need to, because if they play like they did against Nebraska and Indiana, they'll lose to Purdue. I think they'll play better than that. I'm not guaranteeing a win, though. I think it's going to be very difficult. I'm still watching Purdue film. Brian from Forest Hills, Michigan says, how do you see, this is a basketball question now, says, how do you see this Michigan State basketball squad measuring up in defense and rebounding? Good question. Defense and rebounding. That's what I'm talking about. That's what wins championships. Well, you got to score too. But the defense and rebounding sets teams apart, especially Michigan State. That's always the barometer for Tom Izzo, is the defense and the rebounding. I think defense will be good with the point guard. Izzo's excited about Tyson Walker. Practice is going to be open, I think, tomorrow. Tomorrow being Wednesday. Basketball game Thursday against Grand Valley State. So I think I'll be at practice tomorrow. Sparse crowd for that Ferris State game last week. I don't know if there's COVID concerns or what's going on there, but it was sparse. I know exhibition games are not always strongly attended, but that was interesting / disconcerting. Now, Michigan State had a substandard year last year, and preseason hype is not all that great. This year, does that have something to do with it? Possibly. But Max Christie's a guy to see. Good player. But defense, Walker at the point's going to help. Gabe Brown's got to continue to focus on lateral movement. He's stronger. Max Christie, they were kind of wondering about how strong he would be. He's been pretty good in that area. Akins is going to come off the bench as a freshman and give you a push on defense, which is good. Rim protection, Sissoko, moving around, blocking shots, big, strong guy. I thought Sissoko was better in all areas than Bingham was in the Ferris State game. Bingham's got more scoring ability, but if he's not going to score, Sissoko's doing everything else better right now. We'll see if that happens in the second exhibition game. In terms of guarding a stretch 4 or a mobile 4 that can put the ball on the deck, you need to have one of those. And Malik Hall can do that. So I think those things, I think there's some good components there. You don't have a ton of, and you've got some experience in the back line too. We'll see what Joey Hauser can do. But I think defensive rebounding will be strong, will be good. Not the best it's ever been. Last year, defense was one of his worst teams. It won't be like 2001 defense and rebounding. But I think it'll get back to being pretty good. How good? We'll have to watch as it goes. Excuse me. All right. There was a question about spring screen passes from Uper and Traverse City via Newberry, Michigan, but we kind of went over that already. Kind of. Question from Spark Plus deals with Walker, and he says his uncanny ability to run through tight holes and would-be tacklers this past Saturday was uncanny. We've seen it before, but this Saturday it appears as if he ramped it up a notch or 2 or 3. Just an amazing performance, he said. Question, he says, how much of this would you attribute to continued seemingly imperceptible improvements in offensive line play? Is this a harbinger of things to come? Offensive line play was improved. We talked about that coming off the bye week moments ago with Big Mooby. Some of the schemes were dialed in and pretty good. Also, like we talked about earlier, Kapilovic and William Piegler have been working with Kenneth Walker about, play expression, setting up blockers, so to speak, but run into the smoke, trusting and running not to contact, but don't be looking to abort mission and bounce as quickly. Adam in Atlanta, Georgia says, Jim, that was a sobering pre-snap read last week, but dead on and great read. I love the objectivity. It would not be the same quality if it had a green tint. Thank you. Was wrong on some things. McNamara was better than I thought. Michigan State did not get. I thought Michigan State would have a hard time giving up less than 175, and they gave up about 145 into the tailbacks, or they do tailbacks. That's what was impressive. Haskins 14 carries, 59 yards. Corum 13 carries, 45 yards. Haskins 4.2 per carry. Corum 3.5 per carry. Total tailbacks, 104 yards, 27 carries. So tailbacks as a whole, 3.8 per carry. 3.8 per carry. That is excellent run defense. I didn't think Michigan State was capable of doing that. I thought they might be capable on their very, very best day, but I thought Michigan would be wearing them down. Because I thought that those backs would get strong. They were getting stronger against other opponents, but not Michigan State. That bodes well to the continued trend of Michigan State's conditioning level in the deep end, punching in the 14th and 15th rounds. It's not just talk, it's the truth. All right, we're getting up toward 11:45. We're going to cap this thing off. We really appreciate everybody contributing. I've looked at some of the questions here. There's a lot of them. A lot of conversation here, not necessarily questions. So we'll go ahead. Probably and sign off, make sure I'm not missing anything. But I really appreciate everybody tuning in and having a nice conversation, a nice fireside chat. It got a little chilly today in East Lansing. Conan Dyke and I were over at the Perlis Plaza doing the VCast. We talked a lot of serious Michigan State football there for about a 30-minute VCast. Go to SpartanMag.com, check that out. And it got a little cold out there. I think it was like 40 degrees, 42 degrees. Sun went behind the clouds. And right after we turned off the camera, it started snowing a little bit in East Lansing. I wish that it had been snowing during the VCast. That would have been fun. But it's kind of like a sleet snow, and then there was a couple of snowflakes, kind of hard flakes, kind of rainy flakes a little bit. But it was snow, and that would have been a nice touch to have a little Midwestern football Big Ten talk in November with some snowflakes outside the Perlis Plaza. Almost happened, but that'll probably happen later in the year because we're going to continue to do those VCasts outdoors this year. Because if you go indoors on campus, got to mask up. We'd rather be out there outdoors on camera without the masks. Anyway, hope everybody's good and safe and happy and healthy. Thanks for coming in, tuning in, and being a part of SpartanMag.com. If you're not a subscriber to SpartanMag.com, go become a subscriber. We need more maggers. In the meantime, thanks for checking us out here. Hit the like button. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. We appreciate you being around. Appreciate the support. And continued coverage over at SpartanMag.com. Basketball practice tomorrow. We'll see what Izzo has to say. The video will be here at the YouTube channel and coverage over at SpartanMag.com. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. SpartanMag.com. Appreciate it.